So we'll go through a full breakdown of the character here. Of the move list. I'll definitely go into small tangents every now and then, but for the most part, this is going to be just the full breakdown of the move list and applications and stuff like that. So I doubt I'll make like a full-blown tutorial, but I do plan on this being somewhat like the Raven tutorial from like 10 years ago, where I just same thing, just do a full move list breakdown and so on and so forth. So I'll probably be here for a couple hours. So I likely won't edit this simply because unlike Raven, Lars for sure is a little bit simpler when it comes to mechanics, but at the same time, I'll put some like time codes and stuff like that for you guys to check it out. Take two, yeah, exactly. I was gonna load Daxel, speaking of which. So yeah, so Rage Art, not much to talk about. Standard 20 frame, power crush on 8, like a million of, minus a bajillion on block. You can, like normal, power or Rage Art on block. The nice thing or the interesting thing is just like King, if you're wearing the special costume here that the 2-player Lars is using, you have a special Tokyo, what's like Neo Tokyo Wrestling Federation or something like that. So I haven't explored it, to be honest, myself, but supposedly the Oki positioning after his Rage Art on this costume is better. For the most part, so this one will leave you face up, feet away, whereas the Lars costume by default will reverse the position. So let me go ahead and show you. So it should leave us, if I remember correctly, face down, feet away. Yeah, oh, look at that. Look how far the pushback is. So there you go. If you're planning on playing Lars competitively, honestly, I didn't even expect that. I've never, I've so infrequently done open field Rage Art, or usually Rage Art to, for a kill, that I never get to see how far we are away. That is insane. So shoutouts to wearing costumes. So be sure to wear the costume. There's no downside other than the music changes. I guess if you're not a fan of the music, then whatever. Okay, so Silent Entry 1+2 also requires Rage. That is basically a natural hit launcher, and more importantly, when you transition into dynamic entry. And yeah, so first and foremost, I'm going to be referring to dynamic entry as DE and silent entry as SE. People who have, for some reason, try to change the notation to be DEN or DEN or SEN, SEN. I don't understand. I don't understand that. But yeah, so let me go ahead and show you. So it's a natural hit launcher, full combo, and it doesn't eat your spin. So full spin combo, so on and so forth. You can use it in longer combos. This isn't a great example, but you can basically extend your hits. Let's see if I can fit a lot. Actually, that's not a great one either. Actually, no, let's give this a shot, because they have actually buffed this. So they buff the speed, and we'll get to it in a little bit. They buff the speed of DE1 as well as back 3. So, for instance, combos in the past, you would typically end with deep dash down forward 1 into back 3 SE option. But now, in this patch, you can actually end with DE1 into back 3 SE options. So if you're not comfortable with deep dash down forward 1, you can have a shortcut now for most of your combos. At least typically the ones that people recommend you to do. You can always end with a spin, DE1, back 3, SE1, but we'll get to that later. The point I'm trying to make is that not only is the Rage Art... Sorry, I have to hit the play button or the record button. So I'm going to mash DE2, right? So if I block it and mash down, I get counter hit launched. So that is something that they have improved the speed of dynamic entry 2. They made it faster. They made it recover better. I think the speed was a Season 2 buff, and now in Season 3, this is better on hit, and it's also better on block. We'll get to that in a little bit, but once again, from the Rage Art option, if they panic, you'll get counter hit launch. That's not to say that it's foolproof. Just like most of his other options, like at a silent entry, you know, stepping becomes a real thing. Let's see. Yeah, okay, I guess maybe not even this one you can step. It's been a while since I've explored Dynamic Entry 2 is really good. We'll get to that in a little bit. But one of two options that you have here. So both after Rage Drive, Dynamic Entry 2 picks them up. And the same thing with Dynamic Entry 1. DE1 will get you a better sort of combo potential, but for the most part, DE2 is going to be your go-to option after the Rage Drive. So for the most part, I usually recommend doing this and doing basically a back turn combo. But if you absolutely need like long carry, you're going to want to go for DE1. From DE1, you know, you have options like down forward 3 into DE2. You have that whole combo line for long carry, max damage options. But personally myself, because it's a natural option select, DE2 is so fucking strong to go for. One thing of note that I'll mention right now, but we'll get to in a little bit, is actually in Season 3, DE1 is -1. So you can throw it out, and even if they block it, you know, down back 4 is a thing, down back 1's a thing, sidestep's a thing. You know, if you think they're gonna play chicken, sidestep into Arc Blast is typically what people like doing. Even at -1, you know, up forward 3 is an option. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. We'll get to that in a little bit, but it's an option. But for the most part, -1 is still basically your turn. It's just obviously unlike DE1, DE2 is such a natural option select that I really have to recommend that to be your go-to option. Other thing of note out of Silent Entry, or Rage Drive rather, is he has access to a quicker version, I'm sure you guys have seen this, a quicker version of his Unblockable. So because of how it is blocked, and let me turn on Stand Guard. Guard all, that sounds good. Oh, that guy, whoops. I guess Guard all, yeah. My bad. And we'll get to that too. Basically a faster version of the Unblockable, and because they're in guard stun, it comes out even faster. Sorry. But, and you're like, oh, well, let me just do that all the time. The important thing of note is that on block you can effectively sidestep it. But, you know, we'll talk about combos here first. So yeah, this is after SE. You're in Dynamic Entry, so you still have all the options you have. So like Dynamic Entry 4-3. You have the Command Grab, DE 2+3. That still works. I wouldn't really recommend it. It's still a thing, though. Like I said, for the most part, you really can't beat Dynamic Entry 2. So strong. But after the Unblockable, I haven't done this in a while, bear with me. You can do Deep Dash. There you go. Okay. That's basically the timing. I'm going to get it. I haven't done this in a while, so I do apologize, my peoples. Damn it, dude. But essentially, you know what? Screw it. We're not editing this anyway, so let's just go for it. It's you run in and then do DE2. So bear with me. Unedited. We gotta not be in full run. Damn it. Oh my god. That's what I get for not practicing. This is something I just thought of too, you know. We'll get one more shot. Okay, and I didn't get a dash. One more time. I mean it. Ah, fuck it. It's not that hard. With a little bit of practice, you can make it consistent. But basically, out of the Unblockable option, dynamic entry 2, just like this one, where it hits them airborne or whatnot, you get them into a backturn state. So effectively, it's the same combo as this sort of option. I guess we should more talk about it during the rage art, but for the most part, it's not worth noting. But yeah, it's not great. We'll get to this in a little bit as well. But one of the issues that a lot of beginners get caught up with is they think that like this into like rage drive is like a thing. Like that's totally not a thing. Any sort of time you go down back 2 or wall stand 2, yeah, these are never a thing. And just like any sort of SE option, you should be able to consistently walk it to the right. So let me go ahead and just do this. I've not practiced this in a while, but it should be pretty consistent. Oops, sorry, we need to do down back 2 into SE. And you know what, just for the make it life easier for us, I'm also going to do the Unblockable after. Okay, so we got a 2 for here. So sidestep, easy, right? And just like any other option with Lars, Lars is extremely weak to his left. And it's the same thing with the rage art itself. If you step the wrong direction, there's a good chance you will get hit. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay. I think it's like single step you'll get hit. Okay. Maybe they finally nerfed that. Okay. Okay. I guess in that position, even though that's his weak side, you basically have to commit to the sidewalk. So that's just a trick. It's just the sidewalk. Obviously, don't jump. Just sidewalk. And then you basically get to Lars's back. So yeah, don't get caught in the trap, especially of down back 2 SE. We'll get to that later. But your real best option for rage drive is to do dynamic entry. So forward 3. Forward 3, forward, which is the transition to silent entry, and then do it. Simply because there's much little animation, and unlike down back 2 into SE, it's not really telegraphed. Because out of dynamic entry, keep in mind, he has so many like strong options, you know. So never do down back 2 rage drive. Always do forward 3 rage drive. Otherwise, against an experienced player, you're gonna get killed. 111 was actually buffed in Season 3. This is a 10-frame counter hit, NCC, wall splat, and knockdown. With positioning to the wall, it's just like Dragunov 1+2, where it will cause them to flip over, guaranteeing free hits. At the wall especially, though, obviously this will cause a full splat, and then from there you get your standard full combo, so on and so forth. 111, unfortunately, they made it so that 1-1 is no longer NC. This used to be +0 and NC, and the nice thing, it's not a great 50-50, but it's not that bad for 1-4. Obviously 1-4 is not anywhere close to being super good against experienced players, but you definitely can sneak it out every now and then. The nice thing is that 1-1 used to be there, so if they tried to duck on the timing on the 1-4, they can still get clipped by the 1-1. They still can, but for the most part, you know, I wouldn't recommend it. As you see there, the second hit on natural hit will transition into the full combo. So if you like perfectly space it, and maybe you have like the sickest read ever, that they think you're gonna go for 1-4, I suppose you can throw it out. Overall, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's nice that he has that. So at 10 frames, obviously, if frames on your side, you can throw it out, and because it's a 3-hit input, you can effectively counter hit, confirm it. So just like Dragunov 1-2-1, you can still go for it. So you see, even with a good amount of delay on there, and I wouldn't recommend trying to delay it, don't get me wrong, but even with a good amount of delay for like proper hit confirming, like we can still get the full combo in there. So anytime you're at plus, like Shoe Shine for instance, +0, +1, you think they're gonna hit a button, 1-1-1, hit confirm. If they don't do anything, unfortunately this is -8, so just don't like try to duck jab, mash, or anything like that. you kind of give up your turn. But for the most part, there's kind of those, quote-unquote hesitation frames where if you do 1-1, they'll close up because they don't want to get hit by the last hit, especially at the wall. So you can kind of use those hesitation frames to push advantage. Super important thing, though, about 1-1-1 is that it's consistently minus 14. So if you ever have a character who has a 14, launch. Although that one said it didn't give me a punish. There we go. So it's definitely 14. But it's a nice addition to the repertoire. I personally, once again, I'm a fan of 1-1, simply because back in the day, it's NC, and it's a nice little trick. One thing of an interesting note with 1-1 is that even though it doesn't look like it, the second hit of 1-1 is actually really low hitting mid option. So if you go ever against a stance character, and a great example is Lei, for instance, and you want to option select, let's say, 2 hits of Razor Rush or 3 hits of Razor Rush into a step, this will always win. As long as you're not hit, 1-1 will win there. Obviously, if he hits the 4th hit, you'll get hit. Obviously, if he continues the string fully out, you'll get hit. But if you can properly react to it, 1-1's a strong option because it hits so low. And a great way to show this is like that. So even though there's no really meaty resets in Tekken 7, there's a few characters who have kind of like some cheeky setups. You can see how low 1-1 hits because I'm able to pick them up still off the ground with an upward hitting mid attack. So something of note. But yeah, get comfortable with 1-1-1. It's a huge move. And once again, practice hit confirming it. And also, like I had mentioned, use it in situations where you're either at +0 or +1. Good example, standing 2 is +0 on block. +0, +1. Actually, we don't want to do guard all, though. This is +6. We'll get to that later. Shoe shine +0 to +1. Little things like that. Even like errant, like 1 checks, for instance. Down forward 1 being, if I remember correctly, is it like -1, right? Yeah, -1. Play chicken, 1-1. Oh, hey, you're gonna hit a button. Bam, I'll get you anyway, even on block. There's quite a few examples. I'm not going to go through all of them. But yeah, that should kind of wet your whistle when it comes to 1-1-1. Once again, get really comfortable with this. This is a super important move. 1-2 used to be Lars's best kind of go-to option when it came to punishment. 10 frames. Lars, and we'll say it later, has 1,000,000,001 punishment. He probably has the most punishing options in the game. He essentially has a punisher for every frame, except for I-11. That's his only exception. And actually, you know what? Let's do a side note here. Let's talk about him. 1-2 is -10. For -12 or 2-4. For 13, I wouldn't recommend it, but you have shoulder. For 14, you have forward back 2-1. And that's a launcher. For 15, you have arc blast, forward +2. For 16, you have down forward 2-1. And you also have up forward 3. Up forward 3 has typically pretty mondo range. Obviously, up forward 3 is launch punishable, down forward 2-1 ends with a high. It's non-jailing. For 17, and actually they might have improved it. So let me, before giving you the hard facts with those numbers, it used to be 17. I think they sped it up. Okay, no, it's still 17. So maybe it was 18 and had become 17. But you have back 3-4. Back 3-4 has the range to punish a lot of on-no pushback options. Obviously, it's non-launching, but for tricky like characters like Paul, even though we'll talk about that later, even though I'm not a huge fan of talking about it for punishment options against Paul, back 3-4 is really nice. No way to hit confirm it, so you just have to use it as a punisher or as a whiff punisher. So like get into their face, backdash, huge whiff, boom, resplatch on the wall, so on and so forth. But yeah, he's a monster when it comes to standing punishment. For wall stand punishment, 11, he has a nice little snap kick. And what a snap kick means is if they ever go airborne, you can like basically get a full pickup combo. A little bit more important for Tekken Tag 2, not so much for T7. But yeah, snap kicks are nice because it allows you to consistently pick up. Also, because it goes from the ground, if there's a character with a low stance option or a character who's technically grounded, wall stand 4 not only hits them, but nets you a float. For 13 frames, and once again, we'll talk about these more in depth, has wall stand 2-1, which has actually been buffed in Season 3. And then at 15, he has up forward 1. Your standard option, we'll talk about that also. And then same thing at 16, you get up forward 3, because you can diagonal cancel. He also, and I don't think this is on the move list, but he has a generic neutral hop kick at 23. So decent damage. Obviously we're in rage, but it's pretty good. Neutral hop kick into back 4 is super consistent, so pretty good there. Okay, let's get back to it. So like we were talking about, 1-2. He used to be his best 10 frame Punisher. Now it's arguably not the best, although +7's nice. At +7, you cannot sidestep. Down forward 2 will beat options. Up forward 3 will beat options. Back 1 will beat options. It's a nice piece of frame data there. But we'll get to it in a little bit. 2-1 is typically now the big daddy Punisher, simply because it will force people to respect the follow-up options. 1-2, on the other hand, is just pure frame data. Not necessarily something wrong with that, but there is no option here. Basically, they get hit, they're going to close up, unless they're not very good. But this is essentially a generic 1-2 option. 10 frames, 16 damage, +7 on hit. It's safe on block, obviously. So, like we were mentioning, 1-4 is effectively the 50-50 to 1-1, although it's more like the other way around. 1-1 is your 50-50 to 1-4, and once again, keep that in mind, spacing there. 1-4 is not NC, so even if they get hit by it, they still have the opportunity to block. Let's see if it's NCC. Okay, so it is NCC. I thought it was. So that's decent. The nice thing with 1-4 is it kind of fits that position that Lars has, that like very minute frame advantage. It's +1. Usually if you're in their face, it's going to be +1. Better space, it's going to be +2. But once again, keep in mind at +1, that makes 1-1 a thing. You can hard commit the sidestep if they want to mash a button. Like for instance, if you hit them with like 1-4 and they do duck jab, sidestep, arc blast will always win. That's kind of all about the talk about it. The nice thing with 1-4 is against an airborne opponent. Let's see if I can simulate that. Lars, probably not the best character to simulate with. But it kind of gives you that sort of airborne option select. So even if you need to end the round and you think the person's going to be like airborne happy and like, oh, I'm going to do down back 4, and they're like, oh, I know he's going to do down back 4, so I'm going to do a hop kick. 1-4 will still win to get you the kill that you need. I don't think there's anything here. Yeah, no frames. You're at plus. Better than nothing, I suppose, but it's decent for ending rounds. With that being said, don't use it raw. And if anything, try not to use it for your last hit. Use it for the extra frame. That way you can play chicken and then push advantage after. I guess standing 2 is the next move in the list. And how can I do this? LB. Oops. Okay, so before we get to 2-1-3, let's talk about 2-1. 2-1 was actually buffed in Season 3 to +6. Once again at +6. Arc Blast is a thing, back 1 is a thing. 2-1, back 4 is a thing, although back 4 is very linear. It's okay if like the opponent's going to mash, but this is nice because it is a high mid and kind of similar to 1-1. The second hit can hit low-ish, but keep in mind if someone is like in a kind of like a Fang down back 4, a Lily down back 4, any sort of low launching attack, typically 2-1 is going to go right above them, whereas 1-1 will consistently hit low slump or low stances and stuff like that. But it's nice as a mid attack, kind of similar to Dragunov 1-2. If you don't know how punishable something is, but you think they're going to try to do like a twitch duck, 2-1 will clip them, and you'll be at +6, which is really nice. +6 is a really nice number. Season 3 Lars has picked up a lot of plus frame options, so that was kind of like my one major complaint with Lars, is that he had a lack of frames. But now with options that are like +6 and +5, it's kind of nice. Thing of note, whoops, with 2-1-3 and 2-1-4 is the second hit on counter hit, and it will transition into both 2-1-3 or 2-1-4. So if you space it out and you're playing chicken and maybe you see like a flinch option in there, you can throw out the 2-1-3 to net like a wall splat, for instance. Oh yeah, and actually one thing we have to take note of is that his rage art is just 1+2. I forgot to mention earlier. 1+2 means that they got rid of his old 1+2 option. They never brought it back. But you can get erroneous errors, especially if like your opponent will do like a 1+2 like grab, and like you're either don't hit back 1+2 or down back 1+2. Like if you just hit a neutral 1+2 to break, yeah, you're gonna get launched. So just be wary of that. Always hold an input when trying to break grabs with Lars. Otherwise, there's a pretty good chance you're gonna die. Season 3 though, the nice thing they did is that 2-1-3, and actually we can take off rage to make sure we don't get the wrong inputs. But 2-1-3 is now a crumple or double over stun, which is nice. So just like his other combo structure, E2 pick up, do your best move or do your best combo. Like I'm not going to go over combo structure, and maybe I'll talk about my own combo structure later. But 2-1-3 is just it's a nice season 3 buff. In best of all, it's only -12. So if characters with like weaker options, or if you properly space out the 2-1-3 such that you kind of hit it at tip range, it says -11. So you can, I guess, technically bait someone out into 2-1-3 blocking and have them try to commit to like a 12 frame. And if you know like the perfect range, like for instance Lars 4-4, it doesn't jail, and you can just duck it and launch through 12 frame for them missing a punish. But this is nice buff. He's needed options like this for a while, so it's nice that they added a proper counter hit option. With that being said, his 50-50, 50-50 let's say, is like really mediocre compared to it. 2-1-4 is a natural hit knockdown. Damn, dude, the range. But it's high, and despite it looking like a sort of hook kick, it doesn't really have very good tracking. It has some wonky properties to it, standing 4 and then 2-1-4, where it can sometimes hit crossover. But for the most part, despite it looking like a homing attack and despite it looking like an actual hooking kick, it just doesn't track for shit. With that being said, 2-1-4 is a spin attack. So when you need to get him at the wall, and you need like max damage, typically 2-1-3 or 2-1-4, I'm sorry, is the go-to option. For single hits like this, it's not a great example. But for wall stage, typically you want to end with 2-1-4 if you haven't used your spin yet, or if they're right next to you, simply because it's going to net you a high splat, and you might be able to squeeze in some extra damage depending on how close you are to them. We'll get to that in a little bit, I suppose, though. But yeah, 2-1-4 is nowhere near as good as 2-1-3. One thing of note, Season 2, they had changed it so that you can actually delay 2-1-3 and 2-1-4. Back in the day, Season 1 and before, you had a hard commit to 2-1-3 and 2-1-4. And if you notice the timing on 2-1-3 versus the timing on 2-1-4, you can actually fuzzy in between the two of them. So you can duck the 2-1-4 and still block the mid without mashing a button, and more importantly, and let me try to show you, and this is shoutouts to Jimmy J. Tran for teaching me the hard way. Teaching me the hard way back in the day. But not only is it in the past, basically option selectable. So not without delay, but yeah, you have plenty of time to still launch. So not only do you not have to duck and launch, you can still option select timing and react to it what they're doing. So shouts to Jimmy for showing me that. But in Season 2, they've made it so it's delayable. So even if you think you have a read on the timing, like you can still properly mix it up. So you can do like 2-1-4. So 2-1-4, 2-1-4, 2-1-3, 2-1-3. So it's a proper 50-50 now. If they have a good read on you, or if you're just kind of button mashing, obviously the same rules apply where they can option select it. But if you are cognizant to the fact that you're playing against someone who is well aware of like option select timings or overall the best option to beat your option, that's a thing. Oh yeah, other thing to note with 2-1-4 is that it doesn't do anything on counter hit, which is a damn shame. It's just a knockdown. So regardless of counter hit or regardless of any sort of state, yeah, it's just going to be a knockdown. The only exception is, once again, if they're airborne, 2-1-4 will be a spin attack. But that's about it. 2-1-4, unlike 2-1-3, is not super noteworthy. Like I said, it's safe. But at the same time, looking at the frame data, it's -7. -7 means your turn's over. You're playing Lars. Get over it. Standing 3. Okay, we're getting into moves that are totally useless. Standing 3 is a high. Yeah. No, so they didn't mention it here. Standing 3 can transition into ground state or crouching state by holding down. Overall, this is an input error input. If you hit this, it's -12. The nice thing is you can transition to crouch, but it's still -12. So I suppose if they have a 12 frame mid, they can always option select you. Like for instance, if they're Yoshi or Dragunov, they can just down forward check you. Lars down forward is like 17. So it's not the same thing, but just keep that in mind. This is definitely an input error. I don't think there's any hidden juice to it. You know, just a bad input. The good news is you're never going to hit it. Okay, standing 4, we just mentioned this. Nothing special about it. It has, at best, okay tracking, but it's the same problem, you know. This is, I would say, probably an input error move. If you want to max damage, standing 4 at certain ranges, just like 2-1-4 is going to be high splat. The really only important note of standing 4 is typically with wall stand 1 combos. That's usually where you're going to see standing 4 by itself. If you're at Mondo plus frames at the wall, it's effectively a quote-unquote safe wall splat option because the animation is pretty wonky. I don't think I've ever seen anyone of like noteworthy skill duck it. So yeah, at Mondo frames, you know, you have a wall splat that's safe, but same problem as 2-1-4. Standing 4 is -7, so your turn's over. So it's feast or famine. If you land it, you get full combo. If you don't, your turn's over. But like I had said, wall stand 1 into standing 4 is typically where you're going to use standing 4. Okay, so the move list skips it, but there's a few moves. And let's see, are they going to talk about it in a little bit? Okay, they will talk about it. So let's go into dynamic entry. So, dynamic entry is just 4-3. And also one thing of note is even though you're in the stance, you can actually cancel the stance. And you cancel it by basically crouching. Crouch canceling, essentially. So you can do things. Sorry. You have to be careful with forward. Because once again, if you hit forward at a dynamic entry, it's silent entry. But But if you want to like swag on someone, you can just dash in their face. It's kind of like a wavy, although it's not nearly good as a wave. But yeah, tapping down basically cancels it. Same thing as tapping up. It's essentially a crouch cancel, and that's because in Season 2, they made this so it's actually a crouch. So in previous games, in Season 1 and FR and 7.0, stuff like that, you can interrupt them, but now it like properly crouches. That being said, and I've talked about this on stream before, so you guys may have seen this, even though he high crushes, even though he high crushes, does he high crush though? So let's try doing that really late. Okay. Okay, so sorry, I just realized I had to. So we're gonna do standing jab into dynamic entry. Okay, I see what's wrong here. Let me show you properly. 1, dynamic entry. Okay, so basically what I was trying to show. And it's not gonna happen. Okay, so I'm not sure how I'm going to show it, but dynamic entry does high crush. The problem, which I was trying to show, is that with dynamic entry, it does beat single jabs in like highs, but the problem is if they like do 1-2, you just win. Yeah, you just beat them with 1-2. So even though it high crushes a single jab, if they like do any sort of high input, you'll beat them. So that's what I was trying to get to. I'd have to find my VOD. There was one VOD I had explored it and showed it off, but just take my word for it. This high crushes, that's a Season 2 buff. But you see how like his arms kind of go up during that time. He's actually basically in full standing. He's stuck in this stance. So let me just actually do this. Damn it. There you go. Okay, so we got one eye crush. But like I had mentioned, if you just do double jab, yeah, see, the second hit. He crushed the first hit, got hit by the second hit. So the point I'm trying to make, and sorry for that freaking 3-minute failure show, is that don't depend on dynamic entry to be a high crush option. The nice thing is like dynamic entry 1 is so quick that you could theoretically use it as a crush option, but never ever depend on Lars' ability to crush to be like the good option. Like we were mentioned earlier, dynamic entry can transition to the silent entry via tapping forward, and this rule applies to all options that transition to dynamic entry. So while stand 1, tap down is dynamic entry, and actually I don't know if the move list will talk about it, but from down you can still tap forward, add a dynamic entry to get an SE option. So there's quite a few of them. 4-2-1-3 is one. Down 4-3 is another one. There's I think I've counted to be like 7 dynamic entry transitions. So just keep that in mind. So dynamic entry 1 once again was buffed in Season 3. -1. Actually, let me go ahead and bring up the frame data. That way I don't hit you guys with any wrong information. So -1 on block, Mondo +8 on hit, At best case scenario, at like tip range, this is -0 and +9. The nice thing, like I said, at -1, you know, depending on the type of player you're playing against or how much you're in their mind, -1 or -0 will set up things like 111. Like I also mentioned, hard commit into sidestep, arc blast, for instance. At -1, high crushes are a thing. You have plenty of frames. But what it wants us to say here is dynamic entry 1 can transition to the silent entry by tapping forward. And typically you'll see that in situations like this. Anytime you want to end with a really easy combo, dynamic entry 1, hold forward, SE1 is super consistent. Let me show you like my manual combo. Yeah, so basically anytime you go from SE or DE, this will almost certainly hit. And nice thing is in actual combos at the wall with like walls in them, even if you were to like get into a splat situation, your dynamic entry 1 into SE1 will typically hit. The only exception where DE1 into SE1 does not hit is if the wall is to like their left, like at an angle, in which case they roll out of the way of the SE1. You're at negative. I don't think it's launch punishable if that situation happens during a combo, but basically your turn's over. But for the most part, even if the wall is present, you know, this will either hit on low slump or give you a power splat depending on the range. It's hard to define power splat in Tekken 7, but it is a thing still, and maybe we'll, if I remember, we'll get around to it. A dynamic entry 1-2, NC option. Non-jailing on block, so if they block the first one, they can duck the second. In Tekken 6, this used to have a just frame where it would actually hit 3 times and could not be blocked or could not be ducked, but those times are gone. The nice thing with dynamic entry 1-2 is if you think, like if someone wants to invade your space, or if you're using it in an Oki option, you can basically get a resplat. Kind of like a get off me move. So, oh, you're going to get in my space after I do this? Resplat. You can set it up. Overall, I wouldn't recommend DE1-2 raw, but it's an option there. For the most part, the one time you're going to see dynamic entry 1-2 is for your actual combo splat. So let's do a side tangent since I'm thinking of it right now. For the most part, there's going to be like 5 main options you're going to think of. So, dynamic entry 1-2 causes a power splat, and it will allow you to get like a full combo in. So just keep in mind, like look at the actual numbers here. So 51 is down back 2-3, which is 48. Another common one also is to use down forward 2-1. And actually, this is probably not a great example, but for the most part, when you're actually trying to do a wall splat, down forward 2-1 and dynamic entry 1-2 typically do basically the same amount of damage. For short carry, down back 2-1 is pretty consistent, although it's also the weakest option. He also has down forward 3 DE2, which is, once again, look at that, the magic number of 51. So for short carry, that's an option. And pretty consistent, gives you a nice little splat. He also has down forward 3-3, which is buffed in Season 3. That's technically the strongest option, but you'll find that unlike dynamic entry 1-2 and down back 2-1 and down back 2-3, down forward 3-3 has, I wouldn't say necessarily a dead zone, but it also it requires typically combo variations that by definition do fewer or less points of damage, but it's there nonetheless. We'll talk about down forward 3-3 later, simply because we don't have to talk about this second. But for the most part, yeah, this is the magic number. Like I said, you know, in this combo 51, DE1-2 is one of those set combos that you want to be using to basically get him at the wall, simply because for most parts this is like the strongest ender Lars has to cause a wall splat. Oh, and another one that I really like is up 4-3. Kind of antiquated, but if you just want to completely swag on someone, you can always end it with a 4-3 carry. Although it does require like typically 6-7 hits at most, but it is kind of funny to see it nonetheless. I'm sure I'll think of another one in a little bit, but yeah, just duck this. And looks like you cannot delay it whatsoever, so you have to hard commit to the DE1 too. Like I said, for the most part, you're going to be using in situations where if the opponent hits a button or flinches or whatnot, you hard commit to it and you can get the resplat and stuff like that. Okay, Dynamic Entry 2 is Lars' best move by far. It's been his best move since they got rid of the old down forward 2. DE2 got buffed in Season 3. It's now effectively safer on block, and then in a previous patch, it was made faster. So, yeah, a Dynamic Entry 2 is insane. The main part you're going to see it, I would say, is typically combo structure and short carry and stuff like that, where you can get like multiple reps in. Personally, I'm more fond of its counter hit properties. On counter hit, it is a full launcher, and most importantly, you can delay the shit out of it and still pick them up. There's so much to talk about Dynamic Entry 2. Like, there's a million and one things that you can probably make a 10-minute video on Dynamic Entry 2 alone. It's also typically your strongest first hit launcher, so you know, launch like that, DE2, pick them up. There's a few combos that have that sort of structure. Forward back 2-1, Dynamic Entry 2 pickup. Kind of similar to back 4, although back 4 requires like essentially a class 2 launcher in order to get like the full launch potential. One other thing. Let's see. Not set. Dynamic Entry 2. It's the ground and causes the Tekken 7 style flip over. So it's not really an infinite, but if they tech wrong or whatnot, you can kind of get that forever. There's a few sort of important knockdown hits. Let me hit him there, and let me do wake up kick to show you this. Oh hey, he got up wrong with a wake up kick, and then he died. So the pretty good. Also, there's a few sort of I won't be able to show you here. You'll have to take my word for it. But the hitbox on DE2 is actually pretty nice, and if you delay the input, it will actually cause Lars to kind of track roughly 45 degrees to his left and to his right. In my experience, it typically tracks to his right better than it tracks to his left. But if, for instance, you're off axis and you do a DE2 and you delay it such that it's in the range and they let either wake up 3 or wake up 4 come out, even if they're to your right, you're going to relaunch them. You're going to pick them up, which is pretty nice. Is there anything else of DE2 I really need to talk about? Combos, like I said, really nice having that. Ground hitting gives you the Oki option. Yeah, it's nice. Season 3, they buffed it, like I said. Safer on block. It's still like -7 to -6 or -5. If you were to max range it, at max it's -5. So at -5, you can use something like duck jab. And actually, out of curiosity, let's go ahead and try to show that off. Let's see if we can get this going. D2 into up down by 4. And I don't necessarily suggest this. And it might be like, well, actually, you know what? I think down back 4 doesn't crush properly. I think down back 4 crushes on 6 rather than 4. So let's do a different example. Duck jab. So we need to basically block it at max. Yeah, it's gonna be hard to show that. Just theory crafting some things, since I haven't really looked at it since Season 3. But in theory, blocking at meaty -5 at best is a nice little number, because that allows you to do things like panic duck jabs. But yeah, like I was saying, yeah, DE2 is probably Lars' best move. It's so versatile, so high damage potential. It really kind of ties the character together. Seeing as how he finally has a proper, you know, standing forward doesn't launch. He finally just got his old down forward 2 back in the form of full crouch down forward 2. He really never had a counter hit option other than down back 4. So to have an option like DE2 be a safe mid launcher is a really big deal. Oh, actually, come to think of it, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to show it to you, but similar situation. DE2, if they wake up improperly, it actually will give you a sort of pickup stance. So if you can react to it, you can get it's effectively a relaunch. I'm sure someone has like some hidden Discord tech in order to make it consistent, but it's usually a little bonus if you're able to react to it. DE2, if they get up wrong, you can effectively refloat them, which, like I said earlier, is very, very rare for Tekken 7. Dynamic Entry 3 is pretty good. This was added, I think in Season 1 or at FR. Basically, mid option out of DE. It kind of provides the similar situation as this old Dynamic Entry 1+2, where it's safe on block, or actually plus frames on block. And also, if you see the little icon up there, it actually causes wall bounce. The nice thing with DE3 is that on block, it's a nice little chunky block, +4 to +7. The only kind of problem, in my opinion, with DE3 is the amount of pushback. This, because it's an older move that was added in T7, so like I said, like circa Season 1/FR, yeah, a simple like backdash will typically evade things like down forward 1. So even though you're at plus, it only really shines at the wall. But if the wall is to their back, if they duck, this is a wall bounce launcher. If they don't duck, if they block it or block it sort of meaty, you're anywhere between +4 to +7. So it's nice to have it. In my experience, unlike SE3, which can sometimes phantom track on certain wake-up options, Dynamic 3 or DE3, I don't believe tracks to particularly one side. I don't know off the top of my head what it may be, so let's go ahead and experiment. Oh, whoops, I should, whatever. Whoops. That may prove me wrong. I would love this to be proven wrong with this one. Okay, so it's his weak side then. Yeah. Although it looks like it might have one of those kind of funky timings where you either certain characters with a step to a certain direction, like female characters like Lily, Alyssa might be able to step better than like a male character, but just like a lot of his other moves, you know, sidestep left is really Lars' weak side, and I guess Dynamic Entry 3 kind of proves that. But overall, if you have the frames to play with, and also maybe psychological warfare going on, like psychological frame advantage, the E3 is pretty good. Okay, this is also a newly added move. I believe added in the Season 2. Dynamic Entry 4.3 is basically command Hell Sweep. And also in Season 3, this was made to be +3. So Dynamic Entry 4.3 and 4.4.4.3 are both +3 on hit, which is really nice. Keep in mind though, that it has all the same penalties as being a proper hell sweep. So it is stagger low on the first hit, and then the second hit, although it's going to be a little bit harder with DE, is minus 15, at least minus 15 launch particle. The nice thing is that, like a lot of Lars' other attacks, especially that are lows, it's NC. So if they get hit by the first one, the second one's guaranteed. And then the nice thing, because this is now a newer, quote-unquote, Season 2, Season 3 edition, with being +3, is that actually down forward 1 is a thing. So regardless of how they get hit with dynamic entry 4-3 or hell sweep, down forward 1 has to be respected. With that being said, characters with really strong sidesteps can still sidestep left and effectively beat it, but it forces them to respect your mid options versus, you know, older moves like back Q1, where like just a neutral holdback will cause a whiff and stuff like that. It's a nice addition simply because this is done immediately out of stance, and then in the past you used to have to do forward 3 dynamic entry cancel with down into hell sweep. So compare to the speed versus, there's no comparison, right? Not to mention, you can always get bad inputs, and also you're adding on an extra like 5-6 frames just to do the crouch cancel, and then the forward buffer, so you're adding on at least 5 frames. So it's nice. Important thing of note is that this really only hits standing opponents. Don't ever try to rely on this on like a flinch catch. You might get lucky, but typically what happens is if they're on the ground and like they're doing something, they'll recover such that the 3 will still be coming out, but they'll be to your side, and typically you'll die for that. So don't use it unless you know for a fact the opponent's going to stand up, and obviously they have to not duck it because the stagger low. Dynamic entry 1+2, a high launcher. Not a lot to talk about. In theory, it's punishable, but typically at the range that you use it, it's safe. The nice thing with DE 1+2, obviously it's a natural hit launcher, but the nice thing about it is that most people are going to respect options like dynamic entry 2, and they're going to respect an option like dynamic entry 4. So A, they're not looking for this, and B, most people will not duck against DE because DE2 is so strong. So yeah, you can kind of get away with this. I wouldn't say spam it. Use it in rare occasions. The nice thing is it's pretty fast, assuming you're ready in DE. The range is decent. So it should hit about here. Yeah, natural hit launcher, and like I said, most of the time it's not going to be -10. Obviously it's inherently risky because it's high, but very rare to see people A, expect it, and B, to punish it properly. The only real problem with it, as you see here, this is a natural hit spin. So basically, just like down forward 2-1, you're eating your spin, so your damage potential is reduced. Yeah, kind of mediocre in that sense, but it's a decent move. Like we had mentioned, dynamic entry forward is how you transition into SE without having to do an attack like back 3 or down back 2 or wall stand. Well, that's not a great example. 4-2-1-3. Yeah, much safer. And obviously this is harder to react to and see, so people are going to typically close up once again because DE2 is so strong and so safe. Okay, SE1 is the big daddy, power mid, very consistent ending. So once again, the combo I prefer doing earlier. Yeah, very consistent. 10 hits, 11 hits. SC1 is really nice. Kind of thing of note A lot of people will bite against it, but SE1 is -10. The nice thing is that it's typically, it has the kind of wonky pushback on it that you really can't punish it except for certain characters. Sorry. So let's see if Lars can punish it. Okay, so that's typically what's going to happen. You're going to whiff right in their face. So, and I don't necessarily recommend this, but this is an old trap from T6 that still works. And up 4-3. Yeah. So, not the best trap in the world, but it's a decent trap. Simply because SE1 has such a weird kind of pushback hitbox on it. I wouldn't recommend using that trap against, well, I mean in general. I throw it out every now and then because it's a legacy kind of trap, but for sure not against Gigas, no Jack, no Bob. Any character with like a really beefy 10-frame jab will consistently be able to hit you. Like we mentioned earlier, like every other SE option, you can step it to the left, Lars is the weak side. So you really use this or save this for like the end of rounds or for combos, I'm sorry. The nice thing, once again up there in the top right corner, this does cause wall bounce. I really wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but if someone gets kind of cheeky and if maybe if you have a hard read on an option, you can always net a wall bounce there, although don't rely on it for wall bounce situations. Like I said, it's typically going to be your go-to combo ender option. I don't think there's much to talk about it, simply because I don't want to try to guide people like down the wrong path. With Lars, you can definitely YOLO some options, but for the most part, yeah, you're gonna only use this as an ender. And like I said, it's nice because it's super consistent as your ender. And if you ever see me play Lars, you can smash it. Down forward, okay, so SC down forward 1. This move, I'm sorry, is kind of an antiquated attack. But because Namco realized it's so fucking antiquated, they finally buffed it. So this is actually +0, and they're left in full crouch. So that means 1-1-1 cannot be interrupted, except by high crush options. And then furthermore, counter hit, cost knockdown at the wall strong because of how they're left. And then on natural hit is +8 to +9. So not the best option, but they buffed it so much. This used to be launch punishable, and then they made it so it's not launch punishable, and now it's to the point where it's +0. So remember, you're 1-1-1. Thing of note, they're in full crouch, so typically the quickest attack is wall stand 4 at 11 frames. So even at +0, 1-1-1 will net you into a wall splat. They did supposedly, and quote unquote, nerf SC down forward 1 to have less range, but in my opinion, that's not the case. It consistently works on 10 and 11 hit combos still, so I'm not quite sure, if that was an incorrect thing. If someone knows, feel free to post in the comments to prove me wrong. But in my experience, using my long carry combo, yeah, it still fully works. So I don't think that to be a thing. The really important note for SC down forward 1 is obviously for the ability to break the ground. If you're on a wall break stage, you can, sorry, whoops. And actually, we don't have to do a full combo. We can just show you this one. So this will cause a ground break. So without using your spin, you can break the ground and then do an extended combo after that. But like I was showing you here, typically, You'll see it in this situation with Oki. Oh, whoops. Okay, and the Oki is... So, like many other bound attacks, SE down forward 1 causes a escapable stun. So if you don't do anything, maybe I should have done a short combo. So if you don't do anything, I'm stuck on the ground. And then if you hold back, it causes this little flip over. But if you know what the opponent's going to do, like for instance, if they're going to mash on hold back, 4/4/1+2 effectively hits meaty. And even if you were to have like a rage art option, because of how the frames work, you're going to net the hit. Similarly, after down back to SE down forward 1, you can always go for some sort of ground hitting option, and that's where things kind of get a little bit trickier. The nice thing, down 1+2 hits grounded, and if they get up, you'll get small combo. It doesn't have a great selection of options. I do find that Shoe Shine, or sorry, double action 4/4/3+4 is pretty consistent. And let's go ahead and test this just to make sure. So let's just make sure I can't mash hop kick. Yeah, I don't have frames to get off the ground. So you could hit it meaty. Obviously, the low options for Lars, especially ground hitting ones, are kind of limited. But it's nice that he does have something there. Also, running 3 and 4/4/3 are like safer options. So 4/4/3, if they hit a button, same thing. If they get up, running 3 will have to be blocked meaty, and you'll be at plus frames. But for the most part, usually down back or SE down forward 1, 4/4/1+2 is your go-to. Otherwise, if they don't do anything, down 1+2 hits, 4/4/3+4 always hits. You know, use at your discretion. But usually that's where you get the juice for SE down forward 1. Let's go tomorrow. Okay, low option out of SE. They've also made it so it's a consistent counter hit launcher. Only like -13 on block, so risk reward is pretty in your favor. Same thing like we mentioned earlier, just like down forward 1. Sorry, we'll get to it later. SC4. It's linear as fuck. So if if someone is trying to get cheeky, oops, bad one. It's the same problem like all the other Lars attacks. Yeah, doesn't track for shit. Not yet, no. But the nice thing, it's a high crush option. So, if you think they're going to go high, you can throw it out. It's not great, but it's not bad. Like I said, this does high crush counter hit launcher, so that's kind of nice. The real juice to it, and I'll show you the same combo structure I showed you earlier, is that you can space it and cause a fake combo drop, such that if they want to mash a button, and actually let's see if I can simulate this. This should theoretically work. Okay, that almost was close, but basically you can purposely let combos drop out, and because of how the wake-up system works in Tekken 7, they'll have to basically block it. And by block it, I mean they cannot hit a button in between, otherwise your reset will reset them. So let's try it one more time. Yeah, kind of cheeky reset, not great, not bad. Similar to Dynamic Entry 2, SE2 on certain wake-up options will track to Lars' weak side. So while down back 2, like SC2, is super linear, in Wake Up it actually isn't linear, which is kind of nice. Other nice thing of SC2 is that this is actually +5 on hit, +5, and leaves them in a standing state. So SC2 into Arc Blast cannot be interrupted, or I'm sorry, I should say because you're in full crouch, 1 cannot be interrupted. If they hit a button, you'll win. You win advantageously, and then like I said, this low is a counter hit launcher. One other thing of note is that SE2 will be your go-to option when it comes to hitting opponents back turn and then hitting the opponents who are back turn at the wall. So let me do this one, my favorite standing combo. So the SE2, if you space it properly, yeah, go ahead, will hit for grounded. It will be guaranteed. If they hit a button, will be a reset situation. And then, like I said, because of how Wake Up works in this game, too many hits, I'm sorry. They get hit by it, and then it's always in your advantage. And then, like I said, at the wall, in there, I won't be able to show you the example, but for instance, like DE1, SE2 to the opponent's back at the wall is guaranteed. So this will hit grounded, unskilled damage, and then most importantly, after the SE2 to their back, you're at Mondo advantage, and you can do things like wall stand 2-1, which will interrupt. It will interrupt anything they do, and they basically have to block it meaty. So meaty is not a term you typically hear in Tekken, but there are a few attacks that are blocked meaty. There's no change to the frame data really for wall stand 2-1, especially, but it will force them to essentially not hit buttons, and even on flinch, the wall stand 2-1 will still hit them. So it's nice, it's cheeky. Someone made a clip of it. I'll probably post the clip in the comments, so you can take a look at what that actually looks like in real gameplay. But yeah, don't sleep on SE2 when it comes to combo selection and other options. It's nice. And let's see, I think even on long hit it still works. Yeah, I mean, that's insane. It's so nice. This is a really good move when it comes to combos and resets. It's not good when you just do this. That's the worst time you can use it. Okay. SE3, crowd favorite. It's his mid launching option. It's -14. It does have kind of some wonky tracking, and just like Dynamic Entry 2, SE3 can basically hit reset to like the wrong direction. So like even if they're to your back, I've seen SE3 hit. It's kind of it's really good, but it's really bad. The bad part about it, like I said, it's -14. So if your opponent has a good 14 frame and they know and they are able to get you to do it, you'll die for it. But for the most part, it's pretty hard to react to, and it's effectively invisible. And then also, like I said, has the wonky tracking. And furthermore, it's a natural hit launcher. So do your typical whatever you want combo structure. The important thing that we really should mention about SE3, getting away from the boring stuff, you know, it's a launcher and it low crushes and shit like that, who gives a shit, is that it's typically your second Oki option when it comes to Wake Up. Sorry, so just like SE2, you can reset them. But SE3 is your go-to Oki if you don't want to end with down back, or you know, SE down forward 1. Things like after SE3 for your Oki, you do have options just like a meaty hitting, what do you call it? Meaty hitting double action. So if they tech, they block it on side axis. So just like other slide characters, you basically it's a safer variant of it. Otherwise, you know, let's see. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that, but basically they have to take incoming attack, and because of how they wake up, you know, they effectively have to block options. You know, same just like SC down forward 1. Enders, except you have more free flow options using SC3 Enders. So for the most part, I would say get comfortable with SC3 because, you know, like I said, more free flow, there's more options depending on the wall. You know, you have options like meaty down back T1, like I said, meaty double action. It's kind of your go-to option, especially open field, where you know for a fact either they're not gonna hit a button, or B, because there's no wall, you know, or for 1+2 will be devalued, stuff like that. Yeah, I think that covers it. SE3 is pretty good, assuming just like other options, you know, you're forcing them into a 50-50. So once again, this does beat lows and does have some kind of wonky tracking to it. So if you're familiar with certain situations, you know, you can basically win if you know what they're gonna do. If you have some psychic read on them, it's definitely your best go-to option for OP. SC4, God, I hate this move so fucking much. This is like, in theory, should be a decent move, but it's very poor. It is a mid power crush, or sorry, it's a high power crush, natural hit launcher. The problem with SC4, and you know, it's, once again, let's show you rather than tell you. So like we had mentioned earlier, the problem with SC is that all the options are linear, right? So it's like, oh, what are you gonna do? Oh, you screwed. So you step to Lars' weak side. I'm sorry. Like, oh, okay. And the other problem with SC is that anytime you block an option that transitions in SC, it's launch punishable. So you just straight up win. And let me go ahead and show you for people who might not even believe me. So here, that's a different transition, right? Back 3 into SE. Okay, so you're like, okay, Tyler. Well, what happens if I accidentally transition and don't do anything? You still die, because unlike dynamic entry, which can be canceled with an up or a down, SC cannot be canceled. So you're hard commit to the option. So Namco then, in their infinite wisdom, decided, it's like, well, you know what? You're right. If you can launch punish SC every single time on block, you know what? I'm gonna give Lars a power crush. So then you're like, oh shit, dude. Lars actually has an option to stop people from launch punishing my dumbass moves on block. Man, that's so good, right? But oh, I'm sorry. I just ducked your high. Not only did you not launch punish me, look at that. Even meaty timing, I'm doing a 13 frame mid, and it's still beating. And most importantly, the problem with SE4, it's punishable. It's punishable, period. Oh, and it doesn't track because it's non-homing. It's the exact same problem Lars has with all his other SE options. So unlike Backlash for Harong, which is a homing instant, basically instant, because for Harong all you do is tap back 3+4 to do stance, and then do 3 slide 4. So not only does his Backlash home, it can be done instantly. It's plus frames on block. Backlash is anywhere between +6 to +8 because it causes that side stagger where you're facing the wrong direction. But it's also, yeah, it's not punishable. So not only can you launch punish it, that time I didn't hold anything. But like I said, it's punishable. SC4 is typically -10. Why is this -10? It doesn't even track. Like I said, it's the exact same problem Lars has with every other SE option on block. Therefore, it's a terrible option. It's garbage. It literally beats the one fringe case where your opponent, once again, knows that SE transition is launch punish on block. It beats that one fringe case. That's it. Ergo, it's garbage. Namco needs to make it a homing attack, and they need to make it not be -10. I don't care if it's not plus frames, but it should not be. It should home. It's honestly insulting that this is not a homing attack. I'm flabbergasted why Namco designed this attack this way. It's very, very. It's disappointing. They finally made progress with Lars in season 3 by giving him tools he actually needed, but then they add a trash new move, which is disappointing. Maybe Namco will fix it. I don't think so, but maybe. This is an interesting thing. So in Tekken 6, Lars could do 4-2-1. Lars could do 4-1-2, and he could do 4-2-1. In Tekken 7, they added it so 4-2-1 is a stance transition, and they did 4-1-2 is stance transition, and 4-2-1 is a stance transition. Like we had mentioned, the problem with 4-2-1 is that because it's an SE transition, all the options are launch punishable. So if they block this, and you get stuck in stance because you're playing like 7.0 or an older version, like season 1 and before, you die. But they added the ability to not go into stance transition by just tapping back. So rather than do this and then hold forward to do stance, you just don't do anything. And then to not go into stance, you just hold back. It's the same thing with 4-2-1. 4-2-1 can be held back and not go into stance. Forward 1-2, the same thing. It's hard to talk about simply because these are, I would say, pretty fringe Punisher options. The nice thing that is kind of slept on, we're talking about season 2. Keep in mind, back when Lars didn't have any frames, 4-2-1 is +6, and 4-2-1 and forward 1-2 are both +6. So if you ever want not a 12-frame knockdown with 4-2-4, you could always cash with forward 2-1 and then go for something like Arc Blast, which can't be interrupted, or back 4, which is also buffed to 15 frames. So it's kind of a long history, but it's nice that they added this. And like I said, I think they added the ability to not transition in. Actually, I think that's from FR. So it's been like that for a while. It's nice that he cannot transition. Overall, though, it's kind of mediocre. This is 13 frames, so not much to talk about. I think forward 1-2 has a little bit of tracking to it. For the most part, like I said, 4-2-1. Sorry, not forward back 2-1. 4-2-1 is, like I said, if you want to score some damage but don't want to knock the opponent down. But for the most part, Lars gets the most juice by knocking opponents down, where you have options like we mentioned, DE2 being meaty. Mentioned this already, 4-2-1 transitions naturally by not tapping back. But it's SE, so it's launch punishable on block. 4-2-1-3 is kind of, it's hard to describe. I wouldn't necessarily use this raw. The real juice of this move, and actually I never realized that, but I guess 4-2-1-3 is safe on block. So that's the real reason for it, but typically you're going to use 4-2-1-3 transition into dynamic entry. So like that's the juice. But I guess that's decent. The nice thing is that it causes knockdown or wall splat. I don't know if I'd ever recommend doing this raw. That kind of seems weird. But I suppose, you know, if you're feeling yourself, you could always go for it. Okay, so that's nice to know. So 4-2-1-3, the second hit on counter hit will net you the same splat, but I really can't recommend using this attack. It's a weird one to talk about. Usually people instead, like I said, will go into dynamic entry combos instead. That's where all the real juice comes from. Oh yeah, sorry. I'm doing T. I'm doing attack combo. Yeah, something like that. That's usually where it is. A lot of people like doing down forward 1 options. Personally, I kind of fade away from that combo, but that's usually where you'll see your 4-2-1-3s. Not much to talk about. You guys have seen it a million times, know it and love it. But if you're like me, I guess I never realized the second hit is NCC, and it's safe on block, so maybe I should use it a little more often. It might be worth exploring. We just talked about this 12 frame, safe, safe on block. How's it going, Krissa? Doesn't transition into dynamic entry if you hold back, so +6. +6 is decent. Once again, Arc Blast, back 1, back 4, all 15, so cannot interrupt those. Back 1 is obviously the better option, simply because back 4, once again, is very linear. And Arc Blast will only beat them if they hit a button in between. Uh, 4-2-1 into silent entry is hard to describe. The main purpose you'll ever see this is this combo, where they guaranteed hit because you're off axis. For the most part, 4-2-1 SE is not used in any sort of combo structure, so I can't really recommend it. But in this combo, like I said, I'll do it one more time. This is how you get access to SE down forward 1 into hard knockdown. They guarantee the down was 2. So just one thing of note. Otherwise, same problem. 4-2-1 SE is launch punishable. So I can't recommend it. If people remember, 4-2-1 was his old Season 2 super buff, where this used to be guaranteed. 4-2-1 SE1 used to be NC. It used to be completely NC, and then Namco realized how insane that was, and they got rid of it. Yeah, other than that, I think the only sort of thing of note is for short combo or Rage Art, or sorry, Rage Drive, I'm sorry. If you want to transition immediately into Rage Art, but don't want to use Dynamic Entry 1, 4-2-1 SE also fits the bill. If you're talking about Punishers in general, I would say Arc Blast is better than down 4-2-1 simply because down 4-2-1 is slower and it eats 1 hit of spin. Oh, the Big Daddy, 4-2-4. 4-2-4 is insane. It has Mondo range. It can, I think every single I-13 or I-12 in the game can be punished with this, including options like Kazuya 4-3, what's he called? Brian down 4-2-3, Geese standing 3-3, stuff like that. Basically, if there's anything that's -12, Lars 4-2-4 will reach it. Just like other 12 frames, this is non-jailing. So if you're cognizant enough, you could block or duck after blocking the first one. Non-jailing and high, but it's consistent. If they ever do like a wake up 4. Oh, that's not a great example. That's whatever. You get it. It's a sick. It's one of the best 12s in the game, simply because of its range and consistency. I think in was it season 3 or season 2? There was a sub patch where sometimes 4-2-4 could phantom whiff on the first hit. Personally, I would say maybe 1 in 100 at most. They made it more consistent, so it's a consistent Punisher, but it was so fringe. It was a fringe of a fringe that it really wasn't worth talking about. But yeah, this is definitely one of the best 12s in the game. NC, nice little splat, good punish distance. Yeah, you really can't complain about the good 12. Okay, so this is an interesting move. So forward 4-1 is safe. 4412 is -10, and 44211 is -14. It's very similar to what she called. Who is it? Alyssa? Alyssa, who has a very similar string. The nice thing is that let me show you. So typically in my combo, I will use that for filler because it essentially keeps pushing the opponent like to your right or towards the wall, right? And it's not only consistent, but it has a good amount of push to it. If you notice, it 44121 is like the entire string. So what I personally do is I buffer the input. So I mash the 2 because there's no more 2 in the string, right? So for timing purposes and consistency purposes, because trying to like actually time this clean is sucks. So rather by doing that, you can just mash it for timing purposes. Very consistent. It's a little bit, to be fully frank, it's antiquated nowadays, but if you were to go into Tekken Tag 2, this combo works because of the bind system. So what I did is I personally just ported over his tag combos into Tekken 7. So it's nice. Oh yeah, you guys are talking about shoulder, forward plus forward. How's it going, Chemtrin? Yeah, this is a consistent 13. We'll get to it in a minute. But yeah, -10, -14. For low or for wall combos, the full thing lands, but it's so antiquated. It's not really worth talking about. So it's just really good for filler nowadays. Usually open field, you'll see someone go for a hell sweep, and they'll do this. That's a sign they were trying to go for hell sweep. So if you ever see a 4-4 come out like errantly, they meant to do hell sweep. So just be ready to duck. Arc blast, which is spelled wrong. It's spelled like a biblical arc rather than an electrical arc, because if you look at his move list, they're all like flashbang and lightning screw. It's all like a power slug. It's all electricity stuff. But Namco still hasn't fixed the spelling on arc blast. So shout outs to them. It used to have vacuum range, they called it. So like you could launch them from like yayish. Oh, there you go. A little bit of a vacuum to it. It's only -13. They made -14 in Tekken 7. And then they are in Tekken Tag 2, was it? Because they realized how insane of a 15 frame this was. But they made it back to -14. Or sorry, -13, my apologies. So it's not bad. It's nice. It's consistent for sidestep. There's a lot of characters who, if you sidestep and then get like 15 on, axis issues can occur, but this is super consistent. If you're ever really worried about axis, down back 2 will always pick them up. Personally, I'm more of a fan of Hit Swell Stand 4. It's max damage. A lot of people like the down 4-3 DD2 variation, but personally, I like the consistency of Hit Swell Stand 4. Having a snap kick is nice. Yeah, exactly. I mean, damn, dude, that has more range than I thought it does. It's nice. Arc Blast is nice. Especially when you consider his other like primary launching options. Down forward 2-1, which is launch punishable on duck, and forward back 2-1, which is -18. Although this one hits on 14 frames, right? It having like a safe one is like actually nice. It's hard to describe unless you've been playing like Lars a long time. But yeah, don't sleep on Arc Blast. It's consistent. The hitbox on it's nice. And actually, in Season 3, come to think of it, this hits low. They made it so this, even though it looks like to be a high hitbox, it should theoretically hit options like AOP. It's one of the patch notes for Season 3. So don't sleep on the hitbox on this anymore either. Not much else to talk about. I think it causes hard knockdown. Yeah. I don't think you'll ever have a situation where you ever want to do that, but it's something of note. Oh, Power Slug. So the shoulder we were just talking about. 13 frames. The range on it's decent. I find, you know, for the most part, you're just looking at the standard wall combo. Down forward 1, down back 2-1, shoulder. But I've watched Koreans play, and they'll use the raw shoulder as sort of an option select trade option. So Lars, unfortunately, if you were to, so this is like kind of like theory crafting 101, but for the most part, Lars doesn't have an option where if he trades advantageously, something good happens. So like down back 4 is slower, but if you trade, like you'll get the knockdown, but nothing will net your direction. Arc Blast is the other example of a trade that will be in your favor, but like down forward 2-1 cannot trade in your favor. Down forward 1 cannot trade in your favor. Back 4 cannot. Oh, there's some examples. Back 4 sometimes trade in your favor. That's fringe, but for the most part, it's Arc Blast and Shoulder. So if you ever if you're in like a slugfest situation and you just need to net a wall splat, or a situation where, you know, once again, 4 back 2-1, 4 back 2 doesn't do anything on hit. They actually nerfed this. That used to cause a wall splat. That's a long story. We'll talk about that in a minute. But this will trade advantageously. So it's one of the very few moves Lars has that will trade positive. Other than that, for 13 frames, you really should be using 4-2-4. There's no reason to not use 4-2-4. Although, like we just said, that doesn't trade advantageously. But that, like I said, that's more like advanced Tekken 101 sort of stuff. Oh, one thing of note is for wall splat, off-axis wall splat, 1-2 into shoulder is guaranteed. So even though they're falling, it will still hit. So if you absolutely need to kill the opponent and there's an axis issue and the wall's there, side splat, shoulder is guaranteed. But I think that covers that kind of pretty much. Oh boy, down forward 2-1. The problem with down forward 2-1 is just that it's 16 frames. If this was 15, like this would actually be really good. But because it hits on 16, it is severely hindered. Not only because it like 16, like at max you're looking at 17. It's so bad. With that being said, this is an elbow. So you can get some juice out of reversal characters, but for the most part, I wouldn't worry about it. In theory, on counter hit, I think, not even counter hit, I suppose, but in certain situations, you can better hit confirm this. In Season 2, they added an additional frame of hit confirm ability, but realistically, unless you're situation confirming it, you cannot hit confirm down forward 2-1. And obviously, it's high. So if you ever see it go for down forward 2-1, you can duck. You can duck and launch. Interesting thing of note is because you see how it's 75% on the second hit. And let me turn off rage. We can turn that shit off. So the second hit is an airborne, and it causes instant spin, right? So you can't do like this and get an extra combo. Because they're technically airborne, they're in a state where, like, if they try to mash, this will never happen, but like if they try to mash, you can air float them. But more importantly, if they get hit with down forward 2, you can actually stomp because they're technically airborne, in an airborne state. It's not a great 50-50 because like down forward 2-1 is high, so they're already thinking of like ducking, right? But because they're an air bobble, you can stomp. Little bit of a fringe thing, but if you super want to style on someone, you know, be my guest. Have fun. Just be sure not to hold it, because this stomp, we'll get to it, is an SE transition, so it's launch punishable if you hold it. If you don't hold it, it's not. Yeah, obviously, the juice of down forward 2-1 otherwise is that's your wall, your combo ender, because it causes spin. Against airborne opponent, so one thing of note, against airborne, that's not a great example, but if they're like jumping at you, like doing a hop kick, there's a chance that down forward 2-1 will actually go under them. So the down forward 2 will hit, but the 1 will miss. Also, down forward 2-1 has some wonky tracking. It can sometimes track to your sides or to your back, and he'll spin around and do the high. But what I'm trying to say with the airborne hit is if you ever confirm airborne, don't try to commit to down forward 2-1. Just do for standing down forward 2. And then I find a 2 jab in between will consistently hit. So let's see. Let's put him in a jumping state, because I'm not going to be able to show you without him jumping. Okay, so okay, that's a pretty good example right away. Yeah, see how it completely misses. So we don't get him. So even though we hit him midair, we can't get him. So that's where down forward 2 checking in general, it's just like a standing jab for like airborne confirm, you know, kind of pick up. Down forward 2 will be a very similar situation. So, so yeah, let me show you. So standing 2 I find is very consistent. So don't try to do like down forward 2 into down forward 2 1. It's better to take the low damage immediately and confirm airborne hit rather than try to do something cheeky. I've seen everything miss under the sun. Down forward 2 into standing 2 will always work. You can always confirm off of that. So don't try to confuse yourself unless you have like some hidden Discord tech. That's all I found that's very consistent. Like even this can miss if they're a little bit too far away simply because of how the combo structure works. It's the same thing with back 4 against airborne opponent. So in that situation, we got him airborne. But, and this might be harder, against a normal sized character, it'll probably be easier to show. Yeah, it'll be hard against Lars. But basically, he's going to be in like this weird, like micro juggle state. So even though back 4 causes like the little flip over, down back 2-1 will miss. It's going to be hard to show against Lars, but just take my word for it. Basically, the point I'm trying to say is there's so many random variables with hit confirming off of down forward 2-1 that down forward 2-1, down forward 2 against airborne into standing 2 is very, very, very consistent. So that's what I recommend doing. Yeah, this is everyone's favorite. This is kind of like flavor of the month, season 2, season 3 combo structure. Down forward 3, dynamic entry option. That hit, it's not proper, but this one will work. A lot of people do like standing 1. A lot of people like doing back 1 variation. For the most part, it's decent. Like we had mentioned earlier, also it can be used for like short carry. Even though that missed. But down forward 3, dynamic entry, really only noteworthy on the combo structure options. So this is an interesting one. Down forward 3-3 used to be really bad, and now it's only slightly bad. So down forward 3-3 can be blocked, but on counter hit is NCC. They've also made it so it will be basically recover quicker. So for short carry, if you can properly space it, like we mentioned earlier, down forward 3-3 is actually the most damaging wall carry Lars has, but the requirements are pretty strict. So unless you can perfectly space it, I would say fade away from down forward 3-3. The nice thing, going back to down forward 3 as a counter hit tool, is that it actually hits really low despite the animation. So against wake up options, it will consistently pick them up. Don't do it though, it is launch punish while block. If they were to block the second one only, it's -14, but still a lot of characters can properly punish it. But typically nowadays, it's mostly just going to be for short carry option. Oh god, dude. Okay, so this is Lars' Power Crush. Natural hit, knockdown. It is one of those weird... Yeah, pushback is okay. In old games, it used to have mono pushback. Even more than that. And actually, I take that back. You're right. That looks like be better pushback than I remember. But, yeah, true. Good point. I take it back. Yeah, I thought they got rid of the pushback too, but I think you're 100% correct. Yeah, this is a bad Power Crush. Just like basically like other mid options, it's just a bad Power Crush. The nice thing, it's only -12, but like a lot of other options like counter hit, wall stand 2-1, down back 4 cannot be. Yeah, basically down back 4 is non-guaranteed. So let me see if I can show that. Yeah, they guard it. It's the same thing with down forward 1+2. it's a scrub trap. This is a basically after any sort of quick hard knockdown, down 3 hits grounded, is super consistent. You can go for like cheeky down back 2-1, which will not pick him up. But overall, Lars doesn't have any option to capitalize on a knockdown like this. If you're feeling yourself, you always go for shoulder, which will hit flinch. But do not get stuck in the scrub trap of going for down back 4. You're gonna. It doesn't matter the skill level. I've seen everyone and their brother duck this by just. I think honestly, I think it's just a timing thing. It might just be natural to duck it there. So yeah, this is it's rough. Down 4 Rumbles 2 is that similar situation. In Tekken Tag 2 and previously, this actually used to be a plus frame mid. On counter hit would cause knockdown. But now, because it's a power crush by definition, it's -12. I guess it could be worse. It could be -14 like a lot of other characters. But don't go right home about it. Don't get stuck in the trap. Take the little guarantee, little chip hit, and just go along with your day. Actually, it's kind of popping out of my head right now. I think down forward 1+2 has a little bit of wonky tracking to it. Let's see. Okay, no, it doesn't track for shit. I'm thinking of a different character then. Yeah, it could be better, it could be worse. It really just shines at the wall, like we had mentioned earlier. Just like 1-1-1 shines at the wall. The wall positioning is really where you're going to get the juice. It did used to bound, yeah, you're right. But yeah, dude, that's one of the major problems with Lars, is that he's lacking so many natural hit, like block options that are plus frames on hit. So losing a tool like down forward 1+2 for consistency's sake is so strange. You know, to make it negative frames. So basically for plus frames on block, and just to kind of talk about this really quick, he has DE3, running 3, standing jab, and yeah, that's about it, isn't it? I don't think he has anything else. What does he have that are plus frames on block? Yeah, there you go. Oh, I guess technically now SC down forward 1 is +1. Whatever. Oh god, Lars. Just keep in mind the strength of Lars is really wall carry, damage potential, and punishability. Although he's really lacking a scary counter hit tool to force people into making errors. Oh, there we go. Down 2 is actually one of them. But down 2, interestingly enough, just like his other options, is like +1. +0 to +1. So this is rough. Like his other plus frames, down 2, my apologies, causes them to pull into full crouch, and you are left in standing. So what that means is because you're at +0 to +1, that makes it such that 1-1 cannot be interrupted by standard means. Obviously they can duck jab, which is going to crush your highs, but if they do like wall stand 4, down 2 into 1-1-1 will get you that wall splat. In Season 3, they made it such that down 2 can transition or stay in crouching state by holding down. And most importantly, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, down 2 is actually, I believe, +2. Let me confirm. Or +6. Oh, actually, so it's +8. At +8 to +9, and by holding down, if you're able to hit confirm it, you can go for down forward 2. So if they try to disrespect your down 2, oh, fuck you. That's pretty good. If they try to disrespect your +8, boom, counter hit launcher. Even duck jab, keep in mind. Frames are complete conducive for Lars. And also at +8, yeah, you're not going to be able to step shit. Also, I'm not going to be able to step down because I'm using an actual stick, not a hitbox, lol. Story for another day, too. So, down 2 is nice. Yeah, but keep in mind, though, that is only on hit. So you have to hit confirm that it hit. if you do this into the full crouch 2, once again, you're only on +0. So any option, realistically, they're going to do, like wall stand 4, wall stand 2, for Lars, will beat your full crouch 2 because this hits on 15. But we'll talk about that. On counter hit, down 2 causes knockdown. And actually, unlike the other options we were mentioning earlier, this is a... God dang it. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. It's actually a real thing. So this is not a scrub trap. That's guaranteed. You can always go... God damn it. You can always go for stomp and stuff like that. If you're feeling cheeky, you can challenge them directly. Down 3, obviously, will be guaranteed. Down by 4 cannot be interrupted, stuff like that. But for the most part, down 2 into down is what you're going to be looking for. Just keep in mind, once again, that if you do down 2 and stay in full crouch, you're going to lose the ability to do 1-1 checks. So if you try to hit a button, if you commit to the down, you cannot do 1-1 because you're in full crouch. Obviously, with down 2, choose shine, full crouch 2. You can always commit to the hard commit wall stand 1, so on and so forth. Other thing of note is, like we have mentioned, Lars's weak side is his left, and down 2 actually tracks to his left. So it's one of his only tools that hits to his left. The problem is down 2, I guess, hits on 18 or 19 frames, so it's a little bit on the slow end. So if you want to go for like something other than back 1, which we'll talk about very shortly, down 2 is there for you. Just keep in mind it tracks to his weak side, doesn't track to his strong side. Oh god, so this is I'm not the expert to talk about with this one, but down 3-1 used to be an interesting move because it would cause a, well, first of all, look at the animation for people who've never seen that. It's anime as fuck. But it used to cause a ground break. It doesn't cause ground break in this game, but typically what you see nowadays is people going for like the L train reset. Let's call. I'll give L train the credit for it. Down 3-1 during short combos will basically leave the opponent right next to you, and if they get up wrong, or if they try to hit a button, or if they basically do anything other than essentially take the ground hit, Arc Blast will effectively reset the situation. It's not the best reset, but it's not terrible. Like I said, I'm not the expert on this one. For the most part, down 3 is, you're going to be using down 3 by itself, simply because it's not launch punishable. It's only -14. It hits grounded. It's very consistent. It's effectively invisible, and unlike down back 1-3, down back 4, down 1+2, it's not launch punishable at all, and there's no like nasty animation build up to it, so it's effectively invisible. Down 3-1 is 2 hits a high at the end, and it's non-jailing, so you can just duck it and then launch. But typically nowadays you're only going to be seeing it for the reset potential. But it's kind of neutered. It's a shame that they got rid of the ground spike on it. So, but it looks cool. I mean, you can't argue it looks dope. Down 1+2. I'm sure you guys love seeing this move. Basically, it's a forward advancing knockdown, and it actually has pretty damn good range. Look at that. What was that like? So this is about range 3. So just shy of range 3. On hit, it guarantees double action. Guarantees double action. Okay, I'm pretty sure it guarantees double action. Maybe it doesn't anymore, or maybe it's a robot thing. But let's see. Yeah, actually, I take it back. I think they did change that. But you can go for your cheeky options. You're in full crouch. You have shoe shine, wall stand 2 options, a wall stand 4. Keep in mind they are at negative, so if they try to disrespect you, you could always go for, like, for instance, full crouch 2. Wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but it's there. The problem you'll find with a lot of Lars options is that, just like down 1+2, 4-4-4, he has these animations that are totally unique to the move he's doing. So even if the opponent has never seen the move before, it's very distinctive, the attack you're doing. It's the same thing with 4-4-4. You see how like Lars pulls his leg back there? It's like the only animation where Lars pulls his leg back. It's the same thing with down 1+2. Because they're so unique, if they get hit by it once, chances are they'll learn, highly devaluing it. The nice thing with down 1+2 is that it does crush. It crushes later in the frames, but typically you're going to be using down 1+2 in a situation where you're at plus, or like an option where you're advantageous, or you can score the knockdown you need, or basically what I'm trying to say is you're not going to be like getting jabbed and go for down 1+2. Like that's not a thing. But if you're the one dictating pacing and forcing them to think of options, an option like shoe shine and to sidestep down 1+2 might be exactly what you need to completely break their offense. And like I said, unlike an option like 4-4-4, which can, once again, because you're tapping a 4-4, can be done out of full crush. You do have the nice benefit of the crush frames on down 1+2. Overall, though, I wouldn't recommend using it. You're likely going to get killed more often than you're going to net a hit, but it's nice to have some sort of knockdown low, which if you notice, once again, he has none. All his lows leave the opponent in standing, and worst of all, it's typically ballpark -1 to +3. This is the only low he has that's not like that. So for that alone, it's worth mentioning. Oh god, speaking of which, down back 1-3. This is like the best worst move he has. Down back 1, high crushes, -1 on hit. Down back 1-3, high crushes, -1 on hit. Down back 3, down back 1-3, down. We'll put him into full crouch, just like standing 3 into full crouch option. But it's still -1. The big problem with down back 1-3 is that even though it's NC, it does not jail. So we'll do crouching guard into just what crouch. So yeah, so even though you're at -1 and you're basically doing chip damage, they launch punish you. So for that alone, typically a down back 1 is kind of all you're going to want to be using. Unless you, for a fact, know that down back 1-3 is going to kill 19 damage for a launch punishable low that leaves you at -1. Fucking sucks, dude. Welcome to Lars. 19 damage for a launch punishable low is so frustrating. So for that alone, typically, like I said, you're going to want to use something like down back 1 raw and do a full crouch option, or down back 1 into like sidestep arc blast. Well, it's high. Yeah, for the most part, unless you absolutely know it's gonna kill, don't ever use this move. It's just bad. Like I said, this does crush, so you can apply your pressure options there. And also, it's better than doing a duck jab, although the frame advantage is way worse. But it has decent range. Let's see, like yayish. Okay, just short of yayish, so like up there. Yeah, it has decent range for low. And like I said, it does leave you in full crouch, so you can apply pressure. But yeah, for the most part, never do it. There are combo structures where you could do down back 1-3, but for the most part, like, why would you want to do that, right? It's just bad, unless you want to swag on someone that hard. But yeah, -1 is terrible. And actually, looking at the frame data, even the high is -12. That just sucks, dude. It sucks. Okay, so we talked about this extensively already. Never, ever, ever do down back 2 with the silent entry, unless you're in a combo. Once again, on block, this is death. Never, ever do this. You're asking to get killed. Down back 2 is 15 frames. Down back 2-1 is NC. Like other things, if you hit confirm it, you can pick them up airborne. Down back 2-1. Also, down back 2-1 is very low hitting. So in previous games, you can relaunch them. If they hit a button, it's effectively a flinch catch. The second hit will interrupt them. Very rarely will they be able to thread the needle down back 2-1, but yeah, don't ever do down back 2 into SE. That's just really bad. Like we mentioned, down back 2-1 is kind of like your go-to filler. Also for combos, if the wall's really close and you want to play it safe, down back 2-1 is low damage, but it's very, very consistent. I think that's about it. In Tekken 6, this used to track 360. They nerfed the range, they nerfed the tracking on it, so it's not. It has a little bit of tracking on the last hit, but don't rely on this to save your ass. But it's nice if you don't know how punishable something is and you want like an advancing attack that has a great hitbox. Down back 2-1's really nice. Yeah, the other nice thing about down back 2-1 is like unlike Jin back 2-1, which is I think it's -9, and so like +5. Lars is down back 2-1 is -8 and is +6. And best case scenario would be -7 and +7. So it's a little bit more consistent than Jin's, which also has problems where sometimes Jin's back 2-1 will completely whiff on certain axes, whereas Lars down back 2-1 will always hit. So that's kind of nice. I think that's about all worth noting. To the back, down back 2-1's okay because it has the extended hitbox, but we'll get to it later. If you're ever to the opponent's back, you want to do back 4 anyway. But like I said, we'll get to that very shortly. Down back 2-3, to be honest, is really just for the long carry, like where you want to cause like a power splat. He does have down back 2 charge 3, which is kind of, to be honest, kind of antiquated. But it's nice he has something. Down back 2-3 by itself is -13. If you charge it, it's +8. But keep in mind, they can like panic mash you in between and get you. On counter hit, I think it's counter hit. Maybe it's natural hit. Let's see, is it natural hit? Okay, so counter hit, it causes an ass stun. So +23 ass stun, but it's really just for like power splat. If they're too close that you can't land E1-2, or you know down forward 3-3 like we were mentioning, down back 2-3 is the ticket. It does more damage than down back 2-1, and also will give you like a beefy splat. Like I said, not as great once again as the other strong options, but it's still there. It's something to keep in mind. Down back 4, everyone's favorite. High crushes on frame 6, counter hit launcher. The really big juice of down back 4 is that it's actually +5 to +6. What that means is, once again, because you're left in full crouch and you're at +5 or +6, is that if they hit a button, counter hit launch, which is nice. The thing of note is that they made it such that down back 4 in Season 3 leaves you closer to the opponent, but if you're at like tiptoe range, you can actually backdash the mid hit. So only at close range is down back 4 full crouch 2 a real trap. Once again, at tip range, backdash into launch. Otherwise, backdash into launch, you can't do shit. With that being said, down back 4 into wall stand 2 is basically your blanket for everything else. Wall stand 2 hits on 13 frames and is consistent at range 2. Although that very tip-top range, if we're like Yayish, yeah, we still get clipped. So keep in mind, so if you're at like range 1 or range 2, full crouch 2 is the thing. If you're like tip range 3, wall stand 2 is your go-to option, because otherwise they will be able to backdash your full crouch 2. But just like down 2, down back 4, and actually down 1, those are options that on hit are all proper frame traps. So keep that in mind. So those +5s, +6 are your go-to options. So if you can properly hit confirm down 2 or down 1, down back 4 obviously once again is the easier one, but those are frame traps that lead into full crouch 2. The nice thing with now that they added full crouch 2 is that that is now essentially Lars's strongest combo structure. So down back 4 into full crouch 2 does 33 versus his old one, which does 31. So wall stand 4, basically after counter hit, they're left closer. So that means wall stand 4 always works. In previous games like Season 2, Season 1, and before, if you were to tiptoe, like tip range like that, wall stand 4 would never work. So it forced Lars to be basically like range 1 for wall stand 4 to work. But now that they've made it left closer, you can get the wall stand 4 consistently. But as I just mentioned, you should always go for full crouch 2 after wall stand or after down back 4, because I think even at tip range that will always work. That's not tip range, but it's pretty damn close. Yeah, so that's the big damage boy. We'll talk about it actually in a little bit. Down back 4, +5, +6, crushing. It has okay tracking. If you ever have an opponent who's disrespecting you, especially at negative frames, or someone who's very power crush happy, it's pretty good to teach them a fucking lesson. Down back 1+2, not the greatest backsway. Unfortunately, down back 1+2 is -14 and requires counter hit to give you a full launch. It's not great. It's not terrible, but you got to pick your battles, especially against certain characters. Be very careful with it, simply because, like I said, -14 sucks. Also, it's +5. So I guess on hit it's okay, you know, set up a back 1 which can't be interrupted, so on and so forth. But for the most part, Lars I don't think has really great backsway kind of setups, especially because, like I mentioned, this requires counter hit for an actual launcher. Not much to talk about really about it. It's nice he has a backsway, but you know, at the same time, kind of bad. You can do your standard down 4-2, whatnot, so on and so forth. I'm just trying to do wall stand 4, but it's not necessary to go for wall stand 4. Okay, back 1, one of the quickest mid homing attacks in the game. In Season 2, they made it such that back 1... You know what, let me just put on counter hit so I can do this shit. Yeah, Season 2, they made it so this causes knockdown. You have a couple of options on knockdown here, running 3 or 4-4-3. Hit block. I find that down back 4 cannot be interrupted. It cannot be blocked, although I seem to be sucking up right now. But the real nice thing is at the wall, back 1 will cause a wall splat. But just keep in mind that in non-counter hit situations, this does not cause a wall splat. Also, the spin properties only occur mid-air, so unless they're in a combo, don't expect this to be a full launcher, which is a damn shame. Once again, on counter hit, that causes just knockdown, that's it. D2 is nice, they hit a button. D2 hits meaty, and they have to block it. So basically, if they're gonna, the question is, are they going to sit there or are they going to hit a button? That's going to be your mindset. The problem, though, and I never got around to making this video, the problem with back 1 is that the frame data on it is actually kind of poor. So what it is back 1, once again, is one of the quickest homing attacks at 15, but the issue is that it is only +4 on hit. So that means back 1, the back 1 is not a thing. If you compare his homing attack versus like every other homing attack in the game, basically every other homing attack can link into itself in the sense that if they try to hit a button, like your back 1 or your homing attack wins. And there are a few exceptions, like slower ones, but keep in mind that back 1 into back 1 is not a thing. It's not a thing. You got to be careful. Depending on the player you're going against, maybe they'll show you respect. Also, keep in mind the range that they're left at. It's gonna be hard to test. But yeah, that's the other thing. So back one, because it's only +4, and it leaves them at that weird kind of range where a single holdback or backdash will cause a whiff. This is essentially pseudo frames. So not only does it not link into itself, but because they're left at such an awkward range, if you try to commit to an option, backdash into launch is a very real thing. So be very careful with that. Back one has been buffed, like I said, but don't fall into the trap thinking back one is like the best thing to do in neutral. Like I had mentioned earlier, back one really shines in two situations. That is either at the wall or whenever you're at +5 or +6 and you think they're going to disrespect you. Because once again, back 4 is like the ultimate anti-disrespect tool Lars has, but it does not track for shit. Back 1 does track. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, it sucks that this is only +4. If this was +5, so good. But +4 is pretty garbage, to be honest. But with that being said, he needs a tracking option, and 15 frames is fine. It suits him pretty well. Oh hey, alright. So back to 1 was a very old attack that was since Tekken 6. And then what it did is on counter hit, it used to cause like this knockdown state where they'd fall to the ground. And basically what you did is you would deep dash and then down back 2-1 and pick them up. The problem is from Tekken 6 to Tekken 7, the game has evolved so much such that this is not a real thing. Like you could basically escape those sorts of ass stuns. So not only does it not combo, but it would put you at negative, and typically you'd die trying to get this really shitty poor reset. So in Season 3, they made it so this causes basically a knockdown. So rather than trying to get like a cheeky deep dash down back 2-1 pickup, you now have just a DE2 for full launch. So that's nice. The other nice thing is back 2-1 can be hit confirmed. So if you ever do back 2, you have actually a pretty amount of good time to confirm it. The problem though, because it's such an antiquated attack like we had mentioned, look at the range. If you do like back 2-1 and then like even go for like a simple down forward 1 check, even though you're technically at +4, yeah, LOL. So back 2-1 only really shines at the wall. It shines in two situations. It shines in hit confirm situations where you need like a mid confirm and you want a lot of time to do it. It shines at the wall because it's a 50-50 to back 2-3, which cannot be delayed. But also now that they made it so that's like a proper launcher, so that's nice. It's a nice thing, but don't get trapped into thinking that back 2-1 by itself on hit is good. Like you're just asking to die. It's hard to describe, but it's one of those situations. You play Lars long enough, you'll be like, oh yeah, this is good in theory, but not so much. So it's nice to counter hit launcher. You know, I'd rather take one than not have one, but just don't get stuck in the trap. For the most part, you're going to be using it for hit confirming and a 50-50 to back 2-3. Yeah, because unlike 2-1-3, which is very consistent on, man, dude, 2-1-3 though, that hitbox, very consistent pickup because of how the stun style is. Back 2-1, if you're late or are like at certain ranges, it can kind of drop out. You just get a ground hit only, so just be careful. So back 2-3 is a natural hit wall splat option, good amount of damage. The problem with back 2-3, once again, unlike back 2-1, which can be delayed and hit confirmed. back 2-3 cannot be delayed at all nor confirmed at all. So it forces you to properly just bet on it immediately. And also, like I had mentioned, at +4 is a bad number for Lars, because unless you hard commit to like shoulder, like even if they were to mash duck jab, like you don't really have an option to beat duck jab at +4 other than down forward 1. But like we had mentioned, because of how the range they're left, look at it, just whiffed in his face. Just be careful with it. So that's where back 2-3 comes in at the wall. The good news is I would say it's kind of fallen out of favor. It's rare to see, but anyone with legacy knowledge will be able to duck it, simply because, like I mentioned, back 2-1 is so not beneficial. It's kind of mediocre. So, you know, at the wall, back 2 comes out, expect that duck. It's going to happen. I don't think it does anything on counter hit or anything special. Just standard knockdowns. Yeah, nothing noteworthy. Oh, one thing of note is that in the basically on balcony stages and ground break stages, if you get them like into a ground break or whatnot, regardless of how many hits you have, back 2-3 is guaranteed. So if you were to land like some Mondo 13 hit combo and end like somehow open field, back 2-3 is guaranteed. I think it might be one of the only moves in the game that consistently hits regardless of how many hits are in the string. So if you ever need to get them at the wall, ground break, back 2-3 always works. So it's pretty cool. It's a little tidbit for people who might not have been playing since Tekken 6 or Tekken Tag. Back 3 into SE, same problem as down back 2 into SE. Launch punishable, like we mentioned. The nice thing, once again, with down or back 2 into SE options is that it gets consistent. I'm gonna do my long one. Of course. Let's do an easier one. Just like we mentioned, DE1, back 3, SE basically always works due to the DE1 buffs. But back 3 into SE is your go-to option for combo enders and stuff like that. So not much to talk about it. SE1 works, down forward 1 works, and SE2 works. SE3 usually works, but just keep in mind slight variations to axes can cause SE3 to completely whiff. So for the most part, you're going to only want to use SE3 when it's short combos or due to wall position. You need to get like a kind of a wall splat. But even then, on certain combos, and I haven't tested this, yeah, back 3-4 is more consistent for wall splat. So if you have a short enough combo, like don't do it on like a 9 to 12, but on an 8, it should always hit. Whatever. That would definitely hit. So that was at least a 6 + 2. So yeah, don't do that. Oh, back 2. I assume you mean back 3 or down back 2. But yeah, back 3-4, like we mentioned earlier, Mondo range 17 frame Punisher can consistently punish options like Paul. It's also good for causing people to do whiff punishment. One thing of note that I didn't mention earlier with 4-2-4 is that 4-2-4 actually has a bad habit of not giving you a proper splat. So if you have the ability or option between 4-2-3 or 4-2-4 or back 3-4, always take back 3-4. Not just because of damage, but the fact that it will give you a consistent splat. This splats consistently all the time. 4-2-4 sometimes can give you a low splat depending on wall axis. But like we had mentioned, very consistent long range 17 punish. Look at that. It's like about, yeah, it's just short of like range 3. It's about 2 3/4. Also, it causes a spin. I wouldn't really necessarily recommend trying to use this for spin combos, but for like, once again, 6 + 2 like combos, you can get hard splat with there. And actually, let's see what's the damage. 55. So that would actually even trump down 4-3-3, right? Oh, never mind. Okay. So down 4-3-3 is still the superior option. I forgot we're encountering. Yeah, exactly. That's Lars's main like juice is just the ability to punish, dude. He's very, very good at that. Yeah, back 3-4 wall splats, yeah. Very consistent Punisher. It's very nice that he has it. It used to be 18 frames, I believe, and then they buffed it in Tekken 7, I think 7.0. Back 4 has been slowly getting better. It's still pretty doo-doo, to be honest, but it is a knee, it is 15 frames, it is safe on block, and it transitions to attack throw. The main problem with it is that because it's effectively an antiquated move, it's the same issue we're talking about. It will basically leave the opponent at a range where like nothing is an actual trap. So like even down back 2, like you see this, which has good range, it just completely whips in their face. So this is basically your slight pressure option. It's not great. Yeah, it should get better Oki. Like we were mentioning, just like back 1, if you know for a fact that the opponent is going to be mashing, it is a frame trap. So like for instance, +6 into a 15 frame option. Trade advantageously, wall stand 4, trades poorly. And also back 4 is one of those kind of combo video moves where depending on what you trade, you might be at super plus frames. It's not as good as like Negan, who consistently has like proper 2+3 traps on like a lot of options, but it's there. But back 1 is usually what you kind of want to use, simply because, like we had mentioned, actually, I think it might have to be on 2B. I think it's this. It doesn't track to Lars' weak side. So even on hit, yeah, very bad. So it's only if you know for a fact that they're gonna hit a button. Otherwise, even on hit, you can step it. Lars' weak side, it's a bastard, man. I tell you. And once again, Lars' weak side is his left. Okay. Oh, as we mentioned earlier, back 4. So if you go for neutral hop kick, that is your combo filler. Back 4 causes like a float bobble state. Yeah, that's the daddy. Basically, that's the juice. Like I was trying to show earlier, there are situations where you'll hit back 4 very low to the ground, and like that, you see how it's not a combo? That can happen in neutral, so be very, very careful. There's no way to react to it, but you have to be cognizant of that. It's stupid. I really wish this was more consistent. Kind of like Ryan while stand 3-4, which is very, very consistent. Lars back 4, not so much. Sorry, I'm trying to show you guys one more time in case you guys missed it. Yeah, see that? You still get the float state, but they are so low to the ground that literally nothing works. It's his left, so you step right. Lars only has like 2 buttons that track his weak side, other than homing attacks. And speaking of homing attacks, you like that transition? Back almost 2 is bad. It's frustrating. This used to be a natural hit knockdown. Now it causes spin stun. So not even spin stun, spin state. Or spin stun, I guess, is accurate, not spin state. So at the wall, it causes a wall splat, but the problem is because of how they're left, unless the wall is like precisely to their back, like if the wall is barely to their side, this doesn't wall splat. And I don't know why they did this. It's very frustrating, to be honest. And worst of all, kind of like the other ones, like a lot of spin options. This is only +6. So you don't even get like the massive +9 or +17s. This is just mediocre. And like we had mentioned, because this is an antiquated attack from 7.0 originally, it's the same problem where you're at plus frames, but you're kind of left at a bad range. The nice thing is they're in spin, so like the timing for trying to step is worse. But oh shit! Thanks for the sub if you sub. But you gotta be doing the Lars Kriegasm. But yeah, if they made back 1+2 his power crush, and they left down forward 1+2 like the old down forward 1+2 like we're talking about, God, Lars would be so much better. If you kind of notice, he goes really low to the ground. Back 1+2 can cause some high crush, but I would not recommend like relying on back 1+2 to be a crush option. It's just decent because it's a homing attack. It causes spin, so like if you want to do some weird swag combo, you could. But the juice of it is really if their back is to the wall and you have like the frames, you can go for it. Oh, Twitch points? Oh, that works too. I don't care. Oh yeah, I forgot the Twitch points are a thing now. I gotta do that. But yeah, this could be a so much better move. -10. It's the same thing it's always been, but it no longer causes hard knockdown or knockdown immediately. So it's kind of bad. Okay, Zeus, the Unblockable. Let's try this one more time. Damn, dude, I haven't practiced it in so long. Let's do it one more time. Hey, there we go. Yeah. He can combo it. That's about it. It's very linear, or pretty linear. It does have a little bit of tracking, I think, to his right, but for the most part, this is just pure gimmicks. The nice thing is you can just dash in and then 4-3. And actually, let's try, because I know you can like buffer it. No. Try it one more time. Using the buffer technique. Okay. Yeah, it's something like that, but it's DE2. If you're really badass, though, you could do, like, triple cancel, like DE, into DE2. He's, like, totally want to swag on someone. But, yeah, like Task is saying, we had mentioned earlier, because of how Rage Art works, you can do it out of his Rage Drive. But like we had shown, as long as you don't panic, you can get around it. But yeah, it's effectively faster because of the guard stun. But yeah, go to the beginning of the video if you want to check that out. Oh boy, lightning shrew. Oh, this is like one of Lars's good bad moves. The problem with lightning screw is the fact that it is basically an airborne attack. So first hit's a launch. If the attack is blocked, the second hit does not come out. It is like he's mentioning. It does recover you in crouch, so you could sometimes get lucky and people panic and try to jab, and they're a little bit late. In previous games, and I assume it's still the way, you could technically air jab him as he falls back to the earth. Yeah, so keep that in mind. Otherwise, if you're late, you could jab it over him. But for the most part, up 4-3, Mondo negative frames. It says -26. Let's give that a shot. Oh shit. Okay, yeah, there's some wonky things that happen, but you get a launcher regardless. Just do your standard 15 launcher. I think they've changed it so like every person with a 15 or 18s and shit can still launch it. I guess fringe launchers aren't gonna work, but just keep in mind, it's a Mondo launch punishable. You know, nothing is ever going to happen, and like I said, you can technically air jab them to pick them up. So that's pretty cool. The nice thing with up forward 3 is that it's diagonal, so like I said, you could do it out of crouch. In past games, it used to be more like a dragon punch, but nowadays it doesn't really consistently crush. I wouldn't rely necessarily on the crush state of it.
Also, because it's a non-standard hop kick, it doesn't crush until 12. Just keep in mind about that. So he's not off the ground. Like typically, you're off the ground at 9. Up forward 3 is a little bit slower, but it does have a few crush frames at the beginning. But I really wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't rely on it. For the most part, the nice thing with up forward 3 is that it's a knee. So if you see his knee goes up, so you cannot reverse it. So it's better against a character who's more parry happy or reversal happy. Also, the range on up forward 3 is actually pretty damn good. So against a character like Brian Wallstand 1, which is minus 15 or minus 16, and leaves you like yay range, you can always launch punish it. So even if you're not right in their shit, you know, if you're still at like range 2, it's still gonna launch. So that's the nice thing about it. Like we had shown earlier, SC1 into up forward 3 is typically a trap that works on like 9% of the cast. Don't necessarily recommend it, but just keep in mind it's there. Like I said, it's a knee. It only hits the second hit if it's there. Oh yeah, shit! I do have to remember. I have to mention now. So the important thing, because you see it's a ground hit and then an air hit, depending on the opponent's state, you have to actually do various different things. So typically, if you get a hit, wall stand 4, down 4, 2, 1 hits, right? But if the opponent is in an air state, oh, well, that actually hit. Oh, that's lucky. So Lars is a big hit. He's a bigger character than a normal character, but just take my word for it. This isn't going to work against a normal character. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. So in the past, what Lars used to have to do, it was depending on the condition of the hit. Against a grounded opponent, he would do full crouch 2, wall stand 2, SC down forward 1, and then with an airborne opponent, he'd use full crouch 1 and get it. So Lars has a very similar thing in this game, which is down forward 2, CC down forward 2, 1, and that is very hard. So not only do you have to confirm that they're airborne, you have to do a perfect CC into down forward 2, 1. The nice thing with Season 3, and I still haven't perfected this, but actually he has an option now. So rather than do full crouch 2, we will do full crouch 3, and then combo. Or full crouch 2, I'm sorry. So that always works. So not only do you not have to CC the down 2 into down 4, 2, 1, you can just mash it out. But if you see that, you see the ground hit, it's not a combo. It only works against airborne opponents. Only works against airborne. So it's nice he has something that's easy and consistent. That is easier than down 2, CC down 4, 2, 1. But just keep in mind it only works against airborne. So that's a little bit of tidbit for you. You got to be careful with lightning screw. Again, at the tournament yesterday, I played against Alvin. He didn't know that, and I mentioned it to him. Yeah, very fringe. But once again, that's Lars. He's a fringe character. Storm Axle is once again one of. So this is now the third move that's really good. That's really bad. Up forward 4 is fucking linear as shit. Also, unlike Brian Orbital, it's -9. What's interesting about up forward 4 is that just like up forward 3, you see how he falls and then stands up. He's technically crushing for a few frames, but for the most part, up forward 4 is extremely linear. Up forward 4 really is only in situations where you think they're gonna hit a button. Also, because it's a diagonal input, it can be jump canceled. So I'm not gonna be able to do it here. So let's see. So up forward 4, up forward 4, up forward 4. Then you have up forward 4. I'm not gonna be able to do it right now. I'm in too much pressure. But basically, like Cask is saying, yeah, you basically can jump cancel Orbital.
So it doesn't make it faster. So this is the important thing. Jump canceling does not make attacks faster. It just makes them so that they're effectively invisible. So let me go ahead and do like, let me just kind of show you what a jump cancel looks like, because Dragunov's the best character who can signify what it looks faster. And what it is what you do is you have a jump in the input and then cancel it like with a Kara, like Task is saying, for the animation. So up forward 1 is a 15 frame knockdown, right? But jump cancel up forward 1 is 15 frames, but the animation is insane. So up forward 1, right? See that? Up forward 1. And then jump cancel up forward 1. Is like arm and whatnot becomes distended and stuff. So yeah, learn how to jump cancel, because it makes things harder to react to. It's not gonna make your shit safer, but yeah, learn how to do it. Damn it! Try one more time. That's not jump cancel. Okay, I like how I can do it like first try. There you go. But now I can't do it. But yeah, for characters who have jumping attacks with diagonals, yeah, learn how to do a jump cancel. It's worth practicing. But up 4-4, the nice thing about it is the damage potential. Like I had shown you guys with my combo here. Yeah. So basically, in previous games, Lars, if you did dynamic entry too fast, you'd actually go under them. But they've changed the recovery of how it works, such that you can never dynamic entry under someone anymore. So that's kind of nice. So very consistent high punish with the DE2 option, and you can do your standard, favorite whatever combos. But DE2 is consistent. So orbital can miss low states. So certain characters who are very low to the ground will miss. As you see there, it hits very low to the ground. Also, unlike other characters with orbitals, he does have an up 4, but it's still kind of advancing, so it doesn't have that nice kind of Brian crush to it. And then furthermore, he has up back 4, but up back 4 does not do anything on hit. It just causes knockdown. So while he has this, and it is theoretically safe, you're getting the worst of like all worlds. So just rely on up 4. Don't do up 4. Don't do neutral like orbital. Only do advancing orbital. Trust me, you'll thank me in the long run. But yeah, very linear. This is low state, but it has a beefy hitbox when it comes to like the horizontalness. So the forward advancing, like you see right there, the hitbox is nice in the forward state. Just keep in mind, it doesn't track to your laterals. Also, this causes ground break. It's a knockdown, but nothing guaranteed open field. Like, you're not going to do like this. That's not a thing. Yeah, sorry. Oh boy, up 4-3 plus 4. The move is, I don't want to say antiquated. It just doesn't have much of a purpose. If your back is to the wall, you can up 4-3 plus 4 to get out of there. It's kind of like, I guess nowadays, what you call like a demon flip, but it's really just tricks. From up 4-3 plus 4, if you hold it, you can actually do basically an air grab, not an air grab, like a standing grab. Also, it has decent range. Unfortunately, it has 2 breaks. It's 1+2 break, or hold down to break it. Also, to the back, which who the hell's ever going to do this? But it actually does more damage to the back. I don't know where it ever work. Also, keep in mind this works to the sides too. So it's an option. It's not a great option, but that's a thing for the actual grab. What you're really looking at though is basically this. So up 4-3 plus 4 1, which is a low like knockdown. Non-launcher, I think you get a combo. I don't know what it is because like a lot of people will just panic duck this anyway. But it's okay for trying to like snake out rounds. The real strength of up forward 4 is just like in the situations we had shown you earlier with down back SC down forward 1. This is actually risk free. So you can go for stance 4, which is an anime style attack throw. But yeah, depending on the range and whatnot, the damage is okay. But most people will panic against here, going against the low. So I would say don't use the low unless you're like super feeling yourself. Also, it leaves you in a full crouch state. So I guess if you're also, maybe if you don't want to hard commit to something like that, you can always go for the shoe shine or wall stand 1, for instance, so on and so forth. But for the most part, up 4 3+4 is just kind of to get you out of trouble. The hitbox on it's actually decent. And like I said, against like Oki situations, up 4 3+4 4 is actually kind of a real thing. The nice thing is it's relatively risk-free, but at the same time, even on counter hit, you're only netting 44 damage, so it's not the best. I think one day it'll be fully explored and someone will find some really good options for it. I personally put probably a couple hours into it, trying to make it work, and I could only find safe Oki, not like really scary Oki. 442 is basically essentially Kazuya's old 442. 442, standing 4. 442, standing 2. Otherwise 442, hold forward, transition to SC, and then you get SC3. You can also use it for Oki situations, where if you're on low slump, you can kind of sneak in an SE3. A little bit antiquated because that's more for Tekken Tag 2, where depending on how you get up off the ground, certain things can go your way. But it's still kind of worth exploring for Oki. Open field though, it's kind of like your pseudo 50-50, the 444. But like I said, the 444 animation is so unique. You really can't mistake the two. So overall, I wouldn't recommend it. It's hard to work through Krissa. Like I said, it's very specific situations. For the most part, I think the real juice of 442 for Oki comes when you're close to a wall. 442 into SE3 might be able to sneak you a couple rounds here and there. It's not the best, but it's not super bad. But at the wall, it really, really shines. Other than that, the actual hitbox on it is actually pretty good. So with the forward motion buffering, we're going from like essentially range 2.5 into a launcher. So it's not bad. It's not great. It's just not bad. And like it says, it has to hit for it to transition into SE. And once again, the transition to SE, like every other one, you hold forward. And so all you do is 442, forward, 3. 443 is basically a standing kick. There is not really any crush to it, so don't rely on this to be a crush option. It's just essentially a safe mid kick. It can hit basically low flinch. So like for instance, SE down forward 1. And I'm probably not going to be able to time this, but okay. If they get up incorrectly, it's a safe kick. Not as great as like running 3 on like SE options. Like for instance, you always want to go for running 3 instead, but for like very consistent, like say 443 is not bad. Hard knockdown if they don't tech it, D3 or D2 is guaranteed. But if they hold back to escape, wall splat, so it's better at the wall, but it's a little bit slow. Although once again, it is safe on block, which is a very rare thing for Lars here. We talked about this earlier. Hell sweep, stagger on the first hit on block. Second hit is launch punishable +3. You can do it out of full crouch with the crouch cancel, so it makes it semi-invisible. But for the most part, it's very unique animation, so it's easy to react to and launch punish because once again, it is a stagger block. We talked about it earlier. Go to the DE 4-3 if you have questions about that.
4-4 1+2, very straightforward. Counter hit elbow, natural hit knockdown. It's technically punishable. It is -10, and where you typically use it at the wall, they will be able to punish you. The strength, once again, or I guess -11. The strength, as we had shown earlier, is you're going to want to use it as an Oki situation. So, once again, because the hit is meaty, and you get a relaunch. So it's effectively your 50-50. So open field, it is effectively safe against most of the cast, and then at the wall is the only danger of it being punishable. But once again, this is a natural hit knockdown. It has a little bit of tracking because it goes right to left, but I would not rely on this. The nice thing is if it misses, sometimes you might get to the back and it just resets the neutral, but for the most part, it's decent. It's an elbow once again, counter hit launcher for a small combo, and then you can reset the situation right there, and then go for it again. Damage potential could be better, but it's not bad. It's an older move that still has a major purpose. So for that alone, I recommend using it. It's not nearly as good as like Noctis 4-4 1+2, which has, well, first of all, safe and also is a homing attack, but it's not terrible. It's like a necessary evil that just isn't really feels bad to use, sort of thing. Like we mentioned, double action, not a true slide, but it does have some crush frames. Completely NC. The real issue with double action is the frames. +0 is kind of a feel bad, especially because it forces you to use one. The nice thing is, depending on the side of your opponent, you know, if you're playing like an offline situation, you can have better options. But just keep in mind, launch punishable on block, and the frames aren't great. The nice thing is if they stay on the ground, it does hit grounded, and like we had shown earlier, once again, check out the SCU3 options. You can do it as like meaty timing, similar to other slide attacks, although you'd have to do a full combo. So you have to block it meaty, and you can make it safer, but it's not bad. The nice thing with it is that the animation is kind of hidden. It's hard to react to. Obviously, if you space it max, they can react to it, but it's a little bit deceiving. It's not nearly as obvious as like 4-4-4 or down 1+2. So, not bad, not great, but it's still decent. Just keep in mind, just like many other lows of Lars, it is launch punishable on block, so be careful of that. Forward back 2-1 is Lars's 14-grade Punisher. It causes like basically a bounce stun, therefore you can still do a spin in the combo. Unlike previous games, forward back 2 does not cause a knockdown anymore, and also it's -12, but like I said, even on counter hit, it does nothing, so it's kind of, to be honest, useless. So just keep in mind, forward back 2-1 by itself is -18, and because it's 2 hits, there's plenty of time for you to react to the option there. The major problem with forward back 2-1 is because they got rid of bound. It only works as a standing punisher. So against an airborne opponent, you basically cause that sort of hard knockdown similar to down forward, you know, down back 2, SC down forward 1. Against a character like, so with Eddie, back 3-3 is -14. So in previous games, Lars could forward back 2-1 it, but because he's technically airborne in this game, it causes a flip over. So not only does he not get a full launcher anymore, it just gets Oki. So there are a couple of fringe cases that get really hurt by forward back 2-1, but for the most part, the nice thing of forward back 2-1, A, consistency, and B, would be range. It actually has kind of deceiving range. There's a few characters who have significant, like, -17 pushback options, which can still get punished by forward back 2-1, the blue bolt. So just be careful, use it as a punisher. Don't recommend it raw, although you do have the range and speed that if you're feeling cheeky, you can go for the win. Not much to speak about running 3. This running 3 is one of the worst running 3s in the game. Linear, high hitbox,
no real Oki per se. Damage is mediocre. It's honestly pretty bad. Standard +8 to +14 guard. It's unremarkable. If he had a better running 3, he would be a much better character. So not much to talk about it. There's no like hidden juice because the hitbox on it is so poor. Wall stand 1, just like 442, can transition into SE on hit. Usually what you want to do with wall stand 2 or wall stand 1 is kind of put them into a mental 50-50. So there's obviously attacks like shoe shine, which puts you into full crouch 2. But shoe shine, hit them with a couple shoe shines, they'll start ducking, and rather than go for shoe shine, you just duck in their face and do wall stand 2, or wall stand 1, I'm sorry. That's kind of the meta that works really well. Catch people off guard, become complacent with trying to guard shoe shine. A lot safer than doing arc blast like CC or up 4-3. Duck in their face, wall stand 1, only -12, so it's not terrible. And then just be sure to transition to SE3 like normal. Other than that, it's kind of a low hitbox. So like wall stand 2, you can technically use it with a deep dash in wall stand 1. Don't recommend it, but if you want to keep the opponent on their toes, it is theoretically possible to do that sort of combo. So keep that in mind. 442 is definitely easier and more consistent though. Just like every other silent entry transition, wall stand 2 into silent entry is really poor. The nice thing with wall stand 2, unlike down back 2 and back 3, wall stand 2 is a 13 frame punisher, so if you know something's 13, you theoretically could use this to get in their face. This would be the only time I ever recommend using a silent entry transition raw, would be after wall stand 2. And that because chances are it's going to hit, and especially if you use a punisher, it's going to hit. Also, wall stand 2 has a decent tracking on it, so like options like down back 4 into wall stand 2, like we mentioned earlier, can actually interrupt options and consistently pick up. Also, wall stand 2 gets airborne, gives you full combo. You can hit confirm that. It's nice. And like I said, I wouldn't recommend it, but this is the only case I would recommend it as. Because for 15 frames, would you rather do down back to SE, or would you rather arc blast? No brainer, right? Wall stand 2 hold down into dynamic entry, and then like we mentioned earlier, dynamic entry can't go into SE. For the most part, this is like a get off me, and what are you going to do next? At the wall, this is very strong, because with no pushback, if they hit any button and you react to it, DE 1-2 once again for full splat. Otherwise, this is, like I said, a really great get off me card. Do this a couple times, get their respect in neutral, and if they want to push in, you know, you have tools like down back 4, or blast, 4-4-2, so on and so forth. But the real juice is this is Lars' 13 frame punisher. Wall stand 2-1, once again, like I said, has decent tracking to it. Hits on 13 most of the time, and is only -12 at worst. This used to be -13. Luckily, Namco changed that. And with Season 3, this is now +5 to +6. So once again, wall stand 2-1 will make it so back 4 and back 1 cannot be interrupted. And like Task is saying, on counter hit, the second hit cause knockdown, but do not get stuck in the noob trap and go for down back 4, because they can guard it. So typically you just want to go for either down 3 or like some sort of meaty hit into setup. But yeah, it's decent. This is a punch though. Even though it looks like an elbow, it's a punch. So just be careful of that. Swag stomp and hold, yeah. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. Not much to talk about. This move is garbage. Plus frames on hit, or on block, knockdown. This is an input error in move. Good news is you're never going to hit this on accident because there's no inputs that really rely on this. But it's +7. If you really need plus frames and for some reason want to be in full crouch, you know, the more the merrier. Well, yeah, of course, +7, obviously down 4-2-1, arc blast, back 4, like we mentioned. Oh, thanks for the follow, bro. Oh, thanks for the host. Yeah, we're actually almost done, Todd, but yeah, thanks for the host nonetheless. Like we were mentioning, Full crouch 2 is this old down 4-2. Counter hit launcher on, well, counter hit. So it's your standard combo. The juice of it, once again, is if you're at +5 or +6 in full crouch, you cannot interrupt it. So once again, that's down back 4, down 1, down 2, and down 2 and hold, I'm sorry. All those options cannot be interrupted, making it a trap. For the most part, you cannot step it when you're properly confirming it. But there are, I think in my experience, the fringe case would be down 2, can be stepped if you're on 2-player. Other situations, you cannot step it, which is interesting, because in the previous game, it used to track up to -2. But in this game, I think depending on side and axis and stuff like that, it can miss. But for the most part, down back 4 and full crouch 2, just keep in mind, once again, at max range, they can backstep it and launch you if they hard read it. Oh, nice. Yeah. Just be careful with it. But down back 4 is very strong. For the most part, use down back 4 into wall stand 2 as your crutch option. Only use full crouch 2 if you are very comfortable with the situation. Otherwise, against a good player, you will get killed for it, so be very careful. But we did talk about that early in the video, so be sure to check that out. Shoe Shine, necessary evil move. It could be better. Unfortunately, it's -12, unlike Alyssa's, which is -11, and his does not give a reset on OTG, and his is worse on block or worse on hit. So it nets you, like I said, -12, +1 the +2, sets up a 1-1 option. Down forward 1, in my experience, will get you killed simply because a lot of people love mashing after Shoe Shine. But at +1 or +2, once again, you still have sidestep, arc blast as an option, 1-1 hit confirm as an option. Back 1 is a decent option because a lot of people will also try to sidestep. So it's really just your meta setup game. For the most part, though, you're going to want to use one of those 3 options simply because Shoe Shine could be better. Also, like other full crouch moves, the shortcut for it would be down back, full crouch, and transition to hit. So once again, down back, hold forward, and then do the input. That's a shortcut for it. Guess you guys are wondering how to do instant full crouch options. Keep in mind, full crouch, I think, takes 2 frames to fully register as an input buffer. So don't do like this and then do it. It's tricky. I'm a trained professional. But you're typically going to get something like that if you don't know what you're doing. So be very careful. It's worth practicing because this and Shoe Shine can be done. But for the most part, the shortcut is what you want to do. Down back, full crouch. Oh, also, this does not hit grounded. So careful. Let me show you. So don't get stuck in this trap thinking Shoe Shine is going to hit him grounded. Because you are not playing Alyssa, you're not playing a good character. Just keep that in mind. Oh, speaking of ground hitting options, you have Stomp, down back 4, down 3, down 1 +2, SE 2. Let's see here, double action. Wall stand 2 will hit flinch. Let's see, I think, does this hit grounded? Or I think it's a different character. I know stance 1 definitely is grounded. Yeah, I'm almost done here, so. But yeah, don't get stuck in the trap thinking Shoe Shine's gonna hit, because you're gonna die for it. Oh, sidestep 2. Sidestep 2 is very strong. Safe on block, and unlike like sidestepping like Arc Blast, you can kind of throw out sidestep 2. To be honest, pretty willy-nilly. -7 and on natural hit, guaranteed stomp. People have said the down 1 +2 is not guaranteed. In my experience, I've never seen someone guard this, assuming you properly do it in proper speed. But usually, like sidestep 2, down stomp, into SE options. If you're feeling cheeky, depending on wall distance, you can use that as an advantage. But sidestep 2 is safe on block and puts him in full crouch. But it's nice because actually on certain axes, it's better evasiveness than actual sidestep into an option. So if someone is putting you like naturally off axis to a certain direction, it's not a bad idea just to go for it regardless. Also because of at the wall, because of the stomp and all the plus frames you can get from it, it's very, very scary. Very strong option. Don't sleep on it. Sidestep 2 is very, very strong. Like we mentioned, stomp, it's grounded. If you hold down, that will put you into a special stance, but keep in mind, if you do this, you're launch punishable. That's because you transition into SE from this stance by holding forward. You have your standard options for the stance, SE2, so on and so forth. But it's mostly heart reading options. Otherwise, personally, what I do is at the end of the rounds, if I know it's a kill, and because you can confirm it, you can just hold it. And then I call it the Bison, so I love just doing that. But Stomp is decent. His Stomp is -14, so it's technically not launch punishable against most of the cats, unlike other Mishimas, which is usually -15 and -16. So it's nice to have a safe one, or safer. I'm sorry. Just don't get stuck in the trap of doing this, especially when you don't know if the Stomp is guaranteed, because once again, they'll duck it, and chances are they'll panic launch you. So be very careful. Oh my god, this is actually the move list. This is actually Dragon Punch. This is, so during the key charge, he's vulnerable, but as soon as he key charges here, like at this point, he's completely invulnerable against attacks. And he's invulnerable up until here, and then as he falls back to the earth, he's vulnerable. So this is actually a Dragon Punch. One thing of note though, is that unlike other key charge options, which do chip damage, right? Key charge 2 does no chip damage at all, because it's actually an attack. So that's very fringe case. So you can chip someone out by doing an option like 2-1-3. See how we're doing chip damage, which is actually lethal damage if they have to block the hits at the end. But key charge 2 is not lethal, because it's technically not a key charge, which is stupid. But it is a full launcher. Obviously, it's a Dragon Punch, so it is launch punishable on block. But unless you have like the sickest read, I don't really recommend using Dragon Punch. Although it looks sick, doesn't it? His 10 hit is bad because the third hit. Or sorry, there you go. Yeah, very much launch punishable and very much a low parryable. Grabs, not much to mention. His 1+2 grab, upward 1+2, deals bonus damage with the wall. It does an honest 40 immediately, which is the average. But because with wall damage, it deals like a bonus like 4 points or 6 points, something like that. Also, the Oki is not that bad at the wall either, so sets up things like sidestep 2, meaty, down 3+4 if they think they're not going to move, so on and so forth. So it's not terrible either. The real important one is his command grab. So he has DE 2+3, and he also has Shining, which is the same input. Also, this will work against an airborne opponent. Damn it. Not a scrub. I'm not a scrub. Now I'm panicking. But basically, it's a Shining, but like other attacks in the game, it is, what do you call it? It doesn't reset the scaling. So depending on how long your combo is, it's going to scale down, unlike Tekken Tag 2, which dealt 100% all the time. Also, you can do it out of stance, like I mentioned. Yeah, so if you ever need like a consistent wall throw right away, you can go just for DE 2+3 instead, which will always work. Also at the wall, and we should quickly talk about it here, since we're basically done with this move list. So let's quickly go over the wall information.